Except I want to.
Am I personally on the list?
No. And I can't. I cue that kid.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for attending the Board of Supervisors meeting. I'll call this meeting to order for May 29th, 2020. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, thank you for being here. Clerk, would you please read the procedures for the meeting today?
So, in order to protect the public health and safety of Tuolumne County citizens, Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors meeting will be physically closed to the public, but it's available as follows. So, the public access video and audio live streaming is available through the Tuolumne County website at www.tuolumnecounty.ca.gov. And the public access audio is available through a Zoom meeting, and you can call into 1-669-900-9128, and the web ID number is 987-3738-5155. This meeting will also be open to the public via a remote call-in. So during the meeting, citizens who wish to comment on publicly should use our call-in line, and that number is 533-6581, and calls will be taken in the order that they are received. Public comment will be open and closed individually for each item listed on the agenda, excluding staff reports. And the public comment time limit is going to be set at 3 minutes per speaker, and the time limit will not apply to staff reports. I will remind the public periodically throughout the meeting of the call-in information and the number. And please call in when I read the item, and the chair will ask if there's any public comment from the public at that time, and your call will be taken again in the order that it was received.
Thank you. Just a note on the chairman. The board is not feeling well today, and so I will be filling in as vice chair for this meeting. Also, I realize that there's a lot of interest in a lot of these agenda items, and so we expect a fair amount of comment, so I will be holding people to the 3-minute limit so that everyone has an opportunity to speak on these important issues. Additionally, we have 2 closed session items early on in the meeting that will inform discussion later on, and that's why those will go first. So right now I will ask the clerk to read items 1 and 2, and then we will open it up for any kind of public comment that may pertain to those 2 items.
Closed session conference with labor negotiators Tracy Riggs, Eric Earhart, Ann Fremd, Kim Phipps. Authority Government Code Section 54957.6, all bargaining units. And conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, Authority Government Code Section 54956.9D2, and that's 2 cases.
Okay, so it's now open for public comment. We'll give about a minute for folks to call in if they have any comments on items 1 and 2. Staff in the back, do we have any public comment on those 2 items currently? Okay, we'll give it about 20 more seconds. Okay, any public comment All right. Seeing no public comment, we will adjourn into closed session. I saw a finger up.
Play the slideshow. Beautiful, thank you.
Okay, you guys are good? Okay, we'll reconvene this meeting of the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors. We have nothing to report from the two closed session items earlier. However, we will be returning back into closed session after items 3 and 4. Clerk, would you please read item number 3?
This is consideration of approving the direction to staff regarding the options for operation of the Motherlode Regional Juvenile Detention Facility.
And I'll just preface this by saying that we know there's a lot of interest here. So if you have a comment that you would like to make to the board by calling in, now is the time. We have folks waiting to hear from you.
Should I give the
We'll hear a
number?
presentation from staff, and then we'll go into public comment. And the clerk of the board has some instructions on how to participate in the meeting.
I just wanted to remind everybody the call-in number is 533-6581.
Okay. Staff, please go ahead.
First, I wanted to begin today. You can hear me. Is this on? Okay. First, I just wanted to thank the board for allowing us to come here this morning and go over this. I know this is a very important item for members of our community, for us, and obviously for you. And we appreciate having the opportunity to fully explore the issue. There's a lot of information in these slides. We're going to do our best to run through it, but let me quickly just introduce staff. I'm Dan Hawks. I'm the Chief Probation Officer. I have my business manager, Amy Arndt. Stephen Peach, he's our facility supervisor, and our very well-qualified Deputy Probation Officer, Annie Hockett. She's previously our therapist in their facility, and she's also previously a program manager from CWS, so wears lots of hats. And anyways, so we're going to do our best to run through this information. We'll be obviously open for questions throughout, and thank you again for allowing us to do this today. So I stole this from CAO Riggs, and I learned recently that she actually stole this from the district attorney, so I don't feel guilty about it. I think it's an important thing to pay attention to, and I know it's important to us. The first role or goal of local government is public safety, and I think it's something to keep in mind as we go through this today. Also, just quickly, I think it's important to take note of Section 850 of the Welfare and Institutions Code. Basically, I won't read it to you, but it indicates that it is the responsibility of the Board of Supervisors to provide for the wards of the juvenile court, and it talks about the formation of a juvenile hall. Whether or not we actually have a juvenile hall, it is still the responsibility and obligation of the county government to bear the responsibility of how we house and manage those youth. That being said, the process sort of entails. I'll skip ahead. Sorry. All right. I thought this was something interesting to note. It was a recent poll on my Motherlode, and although I know these aren't scientific and they aren't done by random sampling, what I found interesting about it was that oftentimes the public sees the juvenile facility or the issue of the juvenile facility as a separate and distinct matter from public safety. I think, in fact, it's all part of the same discussion that we should be having, and how we utilize this facility has everything to do with public safety. Just a quick rundown of the number of youth served since the facility's been open. As you can see, we've had 160 distinct unduplicated youth in the facility. That also accounts for 58 youth from other counties. We've had 291 total bookings, and this accounts for 10,772 bed days. Just wanted to point out that this past year we've seen a huge increase in the use of our facility, primarily from our county partners. They've been using it to a much greater degree, and as a result, we reached our highest point of capacity. We had, just prior to COVID-19, we had 22 youth in the facility, and it was right around the time that we were instructed to release youth. And that being said, we at the time that we started making releases, we had 22 youth, and we were able to bring it down to 11. But we had to, of course, retain the most serious of offenders within the facility. And just so you can see, here's a sampling of the types of offenses that the youth in the facility have allegedly committed. So just so you see the seriousness of that. So today, my goal is to run through what our staff has done in terms of providing plans for a warm closure. We have two scenarios that look at what we think would be appropriate budgets for a warm closure, and we recommend that the board take a look at that and pay attention should you consider warm closure. We think that's important. And the two key considerations we looked at when we were trying to develop budgets, primarily it's a budget for the care of court wards. That would be to pay for our detention beds with other counties. How we manage those youth would be accounted for with our staffing plan. So we have both items incorporated into sample budgets for warm closure. Once we learned that there was a potential that the facility would be closed, my staff started working diligently to reach out to other counties to inquire about detention contracts. We contacted the chiefs of the counties, 13 closest counties with facilities, to inquire about whether or not we could contract with them. I think the results are interesting. We only had a smattering of, we had four counties that would work with us, or at least, and one county did not respond to us, but the four counties that gave us quotes are listed in here, and you can take a look at. The two we primarily considered in looking at were Merced and San Benito. Something that may be interesting to the board, was interesting to me in looking at this, was the fact that we weren't overwhelmed with offers from other counties. We're starting to see that beds are becoming scarce. There have been a number of facilities that have closed in the last few years. So the tables are starting to turn with regards to contracting for beds. I know that there was talk of 8,000 empty beds in BSCC's report. They report out on what the bed space is within the state. That is somewhat misleading because we are limited by proximity, and we have to work with counties that are within a reasonable distance to us. And also, the majority of those empty beds would be in large counties, Southern California primarily. Also, the 8,000 number is misleading because the BSCC report looks at the max capacity of every facility, and then they go in and they determine based on what the actual staff or the number of youth in that facility, and then that accounts for the empty beds. On their report, it shows that we have a max capacity of 30. We hope to never get to 30. So it's somewhat misleading when you use that statistic. Now I will turn it over to Mr. Peach, so you can talk about how we came up with an average daily population to project for our budget.
Thank you, Dan. So to project the cost of a warm closure, we had to try to predict what the average daily population of youth. We had to try to predict what the average daily population of youth would be.
Here we go. It's like time, it should be good.
Okay, I'll start over. So to project the cost of a warm closure, one thing we had to do was try to predict the average daily population of youth we would have in custody in an out-of-county facility. So we started by looking at our own facility in the last 3 years and our average daily population, which you will see from 2017 to present, is slowly increasing. So with the average of 8 over the last 3 years, and a high is this year of 11. So we looked at that number, and when we projected the cost, we went with 7, and we predicted that we'll have 7 youth in out-of-county facilities. And I'm going to kind of explain why we went with 7. We looked at our current population of 11, and if this facility was closed, we expect that 3 of our youth would likely be placed in a short-term residential treatment placement, and that would bring us down to 8. Also, we utilize it's a validated risk assessment tool to determine what youth we will keep in custody and what youth we will release. So we will continue using that tool even if we do not have our facility. However, we will also have to factor in things like bed space, availability of transport officers, as well as cost and budget on making the detention decisions. Therefore, it could reduce it slightly from 8 down to 7, and we would utilize our day reporting center with likely electronic monitoring for any youth that maybe should be in custody, but we have determined is going to stay locally and be supervised on intensive probation supervision. So we developed a staffing plan under the warm closure. This staffing plan does include operating a day reporting center for our youth, which would be an increased workload for our juvenile probation unit. Currently, there's 14 full-time employees at the facility. We would expect with a warm closure a decrease of 9, and for 5 of those employees to be absorbed back into the probation cost to manage that workload. Some of those things will include a placement officer. If we put 3 youth into placement immediately, we will need a probation officer that is a trained placement officer to supervise that youth. With that is increased probation reports. If you're familiar with placement reports, they are lengthy and time-consuming, and there's multiple of them. There'll be transports, multiple transports out of county, long transports. The day reporting center will operate programs that we currently operate at our facility, and we will need officers to run those programs as well as transport youth locally to those programs. We also would expect an increase in our electronic monitoring supervision, which means we would need increased staff to supervise those youth locally. And the youth on electronic monitoring require intensive probation supervision, daily check-ins, and increased drug testing.
So Steve and I are going to address a couple other just general changes to the probation system. Judge Segerstrom alluded to this when he addressed this board last week. But before I do that, I did want to take just a moment to thank some of our partners, many of whom are represented in this room. As we started preparing for this presentation and looking at that potential closure and identifying the possible ripple effects that that would have on some of our partnering agencies, we definitely reached out to many of them. They were very responsive, very helpful, and just wanted to personally thank them. Rebecca Espino's team in particular, I bugged them a whole lot this last couple weeks. Behavioral health, Director Michael Wilson is here and I think might speak later, and also our partners at the County Office of Education and Superintendent Kathy Parker. So thank you all for helping, and also just a quick thanks to the just outpouring of community support we've received this week. It's been really helpful for our staff as we kind of navigate some of these challenging waters. So I just wanted to give a quick thank you. So briefly, this is certainly not an extensive list of some of the changes that have happened since the juvenile facility has been operational. But one significant reduction in looking at past years has been a reduction in funding. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that in other areas. But probation departments are able to draw down federal funding specifically to work with youth that are identified at imminent risk of out-of-home placement. So those funds are to be used to provide intensive case management services and ultimately prevent that out-of-home placement and that cost savings. So we have seen that funding reduced due to some increased restrictions on claiming, but we have not seen a decrease in the need of those youth that we continue to serve.
In probation itself, you've seen a shift in funding from juvenile probation to adult probation. SB 678, AB 109 has shifted funding to adult probation, to their programs, and that funding cannot be used for juvenile services. Also in the past, before the facility was open, we employed 3 probation techs, and those techs provided direct support to our juvenile unit in things like transports, and there was a multitude of those. Well, when the facility opened, the cost of paying probation officers overtime for things like transports and the part-time cost for transports was shifted to staffing the MLR JDF. Also, prior to the facility opening, we contracted with Nevada County. Part of that MOU was Nevada County would provide most of our court transportations from Nevada County down to Tuolumne County. That they will no longer do that. They are no longer willing to do that. We would have to provide those transports.
So STRTPs, we're going to talk about that throughout this presentation. I believe the board is fairly familiar with it, but for the public's sake, AB 403, otherwise known as the California Continuum of Care Reform Act, was enacted in 2017. And the aim of that was really to reduce the reliance on congregate care, better known as group home placements. The CCR recognized the unique needs of our youth, specifically the treatment needs that they have, and the legislation was really intended to provide more intense services for those youth. Also to better equip caregivers to provide for those challenging behaviors, and ultimately, ideally, increase timeliness to reunification for those minors. A number of changes have occurred since the implementation of this. Most significantly for our purposes today was the elimination of group home placements as an option and the reliance on the use of STRTPs, or those short-term residential treatment programs, for those youth that need that specialized high level of care. The cost of that placement currently, $13,532 per month per youth. So as a point of reference, we looked back at the number of youth that we had in group home placements prior to the facility being operational. We looked specifically at calendar years 2013 to 2016, and our average was 5.5 youth in group home placements per year. So we looked at that data, we did some further analysis, and tried to identify length of stay to get an idea how long were our kids staying in these group home placements, and the average length was 317 days. You know, as a point of comparison, I don't know if these numbers are in the slide, but our average daily stay, if you will, for youth over the last 3 fiscal years, respectively, for 2017, 28, fiscal year 2018, 63, and fiscal year 2019, 63 again.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Can you repeat those numbers?
The group home placement?
Yeah, can you?
Yes. So looking at the data window we looked at was 2013 to 2016. The average of in that window that we looked at, 5.5 youth. And the average length of stay of those youth, 317 days. Do you need me to repeat the
when you say youth, our youth?
Correct.
Okay.
Only Tuolumne County youth.
Probation youth as well.
Yes.
Probation youth or So had the juvenile hall been around at that time, those kids would have been placed in the hall?
No, there were additional youth placed in other juvenile halls at that time. This was just looking at group home placements because we know group home placements are not an option anymore. So we were interested in looking at historically how many
Right.
kids did we have in that type of placement so that we had a point of reference. So this does not, those numbers I just gave you do not include the youth that were in juvenile detention facilities.
Okay, but it would be safe to say that not all kids in foster youth would have been in custody.
Correct. Well, say that again, I'm sorry.
So not
youth-
all youth that go into foster care would have otherwise been placed in a hall.
No, there's a variety, historically there was a variety of options. Historically, group home placements were utilized by probation because of the significance of behaviors that the youth demonstrate. So it's very difficult to place those kids locally
So do we have an average from 2013 to 16, what kids were placed in group homes instead of a hall?
the percentage that I gave you is just group home placements.
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause I guess what I'm trying to get
I
at,
understand what I think you're getting at.
either we put them in a hall or they go to group home. Do we have an
Well,
idea?
and that's not the typical model, I'd say, throughout the state. It's become the model within our facility locally. That may not mean that we always are able to serve the youth at the facility.
Okay.
But what we've had is our juvenile court judge has been insistent that we develop high-level programming for youth and that we be able to provide their service needs in our facility in order to prevent them from going into group home placements. So we've been able to meet a lot of needs within the facility.
I get that. I'm just trying not to blur the lines
No, I
between
understand.
the two.
I think that's what you're getting at, is that it took us a while to actually get to the point where we were providing such high-level services, and then over time, it's even evolved from there. So as our youth have come through, based on what their needs are, we've been able to develop the programming internally within the facility. And a lot of that's with the support of our Health and Human Services Agency Director. They paid for some of the programming, like with the sex offenders typically would have been treated with a STRTP placement. But within our facility, we've been able to manage those youth and provide high-level programming. And so we've prevented those placements. So it's not the typical model I think you see throughout the state, but it's typical of what you see within Tuolumne County.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So I think, again, the STRTP thing is going to come up again. When we were looking at that would be a shift of cost potentially to our HSA partners. And I know Mrs. Espino is prepared to speak to that at some point during this morning. I don't know when that makes sense to do, but I know she is prepared to address any questions that you may have about that potential impact to her team.
Okay, so considering everything that has happened in the past, what it looked like before, what we would need now, and the shifting away from juvenile probation services into the adult world, what would it look like in the present? So we came up with a couple of scenarios based on the counties that we reached out to that responded to us and the proposals that they gave us. And so under this, calling this warm closure scenario 1, so just looking at what the piece of managing those youth that just have to go to detention, that there's not another option. So what this is I averaged the cost that we were proposed for Nevada County, Kern County, and San Benito County placements, because that's the reality too, is that no other county besides Merced, which we'll explore next, is able to take on all of our youth. They said, yeah, we can probably take a couple depending on our bed availability and the youth needs and our capacity at the time to accept them. But this would be the model that's closest to what we used to do, just a piecemeal where we're getting kids in the best placement that we can get them when they have the space to take our kid. What we've got here, and also something that should be of note is that Nevada County, which is part of this average cost, they're considering closure, and as of July of 2021. So if they are, like us, they're grappling with the same issues that we are. And if they were to close, or if any of the other counties that we have in this were to want to increase their rates, the cost savings that you're seeing here would diminish. I mean, this is just based on what our best guess is right now. So our bottom line, I mean, you can look, I just laid out the line items there based on, thoughtful consideration of what we would really likely need. And so in the probation department, at an average daily population of 7, if we had 7 youth in placement at any given time, it would, the estimated savings would be around $266,000 in the probation budget. However, we can't forget that with an average daily population of 7 and needs approaching 11, that there would be a shifting of costs that could hit the general fund. Yeah.
Just a question, and this is a general question, not anything to do with your figures. Given the mandate, what happens if we have a youth and there's no bed anywhere for them? What do we do?
Well, I think that's a good question because we've been there before. We've had that situation arise. And, what it amounted to in the past was we had a list of juvenile facilities and you just start calling until you get a taker. And it's not a great way to do business, but in our previous, we had a little intake area in our juvenile probation department, and we had admittance forms for maybe 20 different facilities just based on that scenario where we would just have to start calling and then we would have to use their forms.
Okay,
yes.
But here's where I'm getting to. I'm trying to figure out how I deal with the state on this issue, okay? If we don't have a bed, and we're calling around. We call around all the juvenile detention facilities. There's no bed. We still have to take care of that kid. And I guess I'm going to the point that you're talking about Nevada County possibly closing theirs. We're obviously talking here about closing ours. It seems to me that one of the issues that I've been talking about all along, because don't get me wrong, I love that facility. I've probably been out there as many times as any other supervisor here, and I support that facility. I'm trying to figure out how to get the state to help pay for the mandates that they give us, and so my question is as counties are dealing with very, very tough budgetary decisions, it's going to get to a point where we're not going to have beds in the state of California, and then what do we do? That's the argument that I want to be able to put at the state level to help us fix our budget situation without closing a juvenile detention facility, if you get what I'm saying.
Right. Well, and that's a very good point. I think that's what prompted the county leaders to build the facility at the time. I know that at that time there was a real shortage of facilities. When the SB 81 grants came along, a lot of counties took that opportunity to build, and unfortunately what we're seeing now is I think there was kind of an overbuild, and some of those facilities are now being closed. So
okay,
thanks.
I
think that's the state we're in. But I think your question also leads us into the next consideration when we're looking at why Merced versus a variety of different facilities. At least with Merced, we had some level of guarantee with that. So.
Okay, so this warm closure scenario 1, again, that's a kind of a piecemeal of working with different counties and sending our kids throughout the state to the best place we can find for them. The second scenario was is based on an offer or a proposal from Merced County, their chief and their juvenile facility. They do have a separate unit that they could offer not only to our county but to other small counties around us, that where our youth could be separate and not involved with, Central Valley or other negative behaviors associated with larger populations. And but they're quoting us at their cost recovery, so they're telling us that would be $290 a day, because they don't really have the need to take us on. So anything other than cost recovery for them would be a drain, and so they could provide us the next best level of service compared to having our own facility, but it comes at a premium because they're in the position similar to ours, where all these counties have had to constrict to adapt to what has happened, and so now with all that constriction, there's not a need for them to just generate any additional revenue by offering a low-ball daily rate. That's where we were when we opened this facility and originally negotiated our contracts, but that's not where we are now. So anyhow, this is a similar budget line item. So of line items. So in here, the estimated savings to the probation department would be around $111,000 in this, give or take. But again, this is still based on an average daily population of 7 youth, and there will likely be more youth that will need to be served in an alternate form. And again, that it's the same it's the same number of youth that would likely shift into a costly form of placement like an STR-TP.
Just to clarify, so they're saying it'd be $290 a day for our youth.
I'm sorry?
They're saying it would be $290 a day for our youth to go there.
Yes.
What's our current rate for youth outside?
Yeah, but we're going to get to that coming up, so hold that question, please.
Okay, so this I know was a point of frustration. It was brought up at the last meeting. What are the costs? What is the actual cost? What would transportation be like? And I won't read these things to you, but in considering what does that look like for us, the cost for transportation. So I have these, what we use to build our formula for transportation costs for your reference. And then I have the comparison table. So under our first scenario, where we're contracting with multiple counties, I'm looking at an average based on the distance to and from the facility and the number of round trips we'd need to make, like for hearings and bookings. We just use the most concrete numbers that we could from 2019, what actually happened. And so, I won't read you through here, but if we were providing a number of transportation that would be needed to get them to hearings, to book them into the facilities, to release them when they're on commitments, when they're for necessary visits that we would need to make, we're looking at a significant cost. And the reason why in scenario 1, it's so much more expensive for annual transportation is because the facilities we're looking at are further away. We're looking at Nevada, San Benito, Kern. It's further. It's more expensive. In scenario 2, with the separate unit in Merced County, it's less. And we would look for efficiencies any way that we could. If we could combine transports, we would do that. That's not always going to be an option.
When you did the cost analysis, were you using your regular staff people, or previously I know we used, I'll call them civilians, but they were part-time on call basically. I don't know what we paid them. I was just wondering what cost factor you used in that.
So the cost factor I used was for full-time staff. What we found, well, there's a couple of factors that have affected. We were looking back at that. It was like, well, if we accomplished this before, why can't we do it now with the same level of staff? And part of that was what Stephen had spoken to about the shifting away from the juvenile staff into better funded adult programs. Also, when we used to have a really good pool of retired annuitants who would work and would answer the call, at any given time of day. And the problem with that is since we're limited to 2 years of retired annuitants, that pool is diminished. The other thing that I've found in trying to staff, find extra support for the staff at the juvenile facility to reduce costs is, boy, is it hard to get people from application to hire in a relief capacity, especially when you're looking at low-paid staff in a 24/7 need kind of place. We run recruitments we ran a continuous recruitment for most of 2019 for juvenile correctional officer relief. We had over 200 initial applicants through the year. That resulted in 2 relief JCOs who were quickly promoted to full-time when vacancies became available. We also were recruiting for a full-time and relief probation aides, and we had several that didn't pass background, one that dropped out of background, and
I get it.
Yeah, you get it?
I get it,
Yeah. Yeah, so that's why we used to have a really large, comparatively large relief part-time and overtime budget.
I know one of your previous drivers, and he tells the story of how difficult it was to keep people in it. He also tells a story of a female that he was transporting that kicked out the rear window and departed the car while it was in motion.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, thanks.
Yeah, we used to have a significant part-time salary budget in probation before the hall opened. Now we have 0 part-time. Yeah.
So I think where we're trying to move to is. I'm sorry.
I just don't want you to get too far before we.
Yes.
If you go back to, on my page, it's page 9, and it has to deal with probation staffing, 9 full-time employees decrease. I thought from seeing previous numbers, wasn't there 14 that got brought on board? So where's the other 5?
So,
Are those?
No, so what we would be doing is bringing those 5 on. So it would be a net decrease of 9. And then the 5 we'd recommend be added or absorbed into the probation cost center.
Okay, and what do those 5 do for those 7 population?
Well, so we had it laid out within the plan. If you look at the details, I know it's just kind of dense in there, and we're going through this.
I know, and this is
right. We're going through it really fast. But what the staffing plan would include, it's different based on the 2 different scenarios. But there's, I believe, 3 deputy probation officers and 2 probation technicians in one, and then 1 is for 3 and 1. So probation technicians do a lot of ancillary duties. They're not sworn staff, but they are helpful with transports and many other things. And so we've used them in the past. We had 3 and lost 3 in the past.
Prior to the hall?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is I don't understand how 3 probation officers and I'm not trying to get into your weeds or your business. I'm just sitting up here thinking, how does 5 staff justify 7 more youth?
Dan,
It
can I
doesn't-
jump in on this?
It doesn't add up.
Well, Steve Peach was a juvenile probation officer before he started working in their facility.
So with the warm closure, the plan is to operate a youth day reporting center out of there and operate that, offering the kids the programs that we currently have. So you need probation officers first to run those programs. You need somebody to transport those youth, almost daily, if not weekly, to those programs. You're going to have 3 youth that are going to be put into some sort of out-of-home placement, which is going to require a juvenile placement officer. We don't have any youth in placement.
I'm confused right off the bat. if those 7 youth are detained in another facility out of county, then we're bringing them back to our facility to run programs or day
And then when we talked about the transportation expenses, youth have to make appearances in court in Tuolumne County, regardless of what facility they're in, and they have numerous court appearances
Right.
and obligations that they'll have to be present at in Tuolumne County. So there's,
But he said DRC, a day reporting center, is for kids that aren't in a hall.
Right,
Instead of being
right.
in a hall, they report to the center to do programs,
Right.
and then they go home.
so that staff would account for transports out of county and management of that, and it would also account for the DRC programming and transport of youth for that.
Do we have a DRC right now?
We have an adult DRC program, but we do not have a juvenile. What we have had in the past, a similar type program, we had a grant-funded MIOCR, mentally ill offender crime reduction grant program that operated on the same principle. It had much fewer youth involved, but it required, one thing that's clear to us is that our youth will need lots of transportation services to be able to participate in these types of services. We also ran that program after school because you can't interfere with their school time. So we would pick them up from school, drive them to the DRC, and then take them home again.
If we don't have a DRC now, we're talking about if we close the hall, we're going to create a DRC.
Correct. As part of the warm closure agreement.
Where's that agreement? I mean, that's your proposal as part of the agreement?
I'm
No,
gonna
that
suggest-
was what was included in the warm closure proposal.
Can I get some
I'm going to
clarification?
suggest we revisit this after the presentation, since we have a lot
Well, it's
to get.
pretty important because it's big. I just want some answers.
She can answer the question.
Okay.
So when I did speak with the state agencies regarding juvenile hall, what I had done was corresponded with Mike Arndt at the time about what are the day programs, because I had been alerted that there were a lot of day programs that take place that are not just for the youth who are there detained in the facility. So that list of programs was provided to the state agency.
So there's kids coming into the facility who aren't being housed there to get programs.
Yes, so the ones who would,
Currently.
and I think you guys said there were, was it 30 or 40 youth to participate, or 60 youth to participate in a multitude of programs throughout the month?
Okay, that's fine. I'm just trying to
Yeah,
get clear.
so
I
that's-
didn't know that was taking place there. Okay.
Okay. So one thing we're just trying to get across, we actually, we wanted to put out the information regarding the warm closure scenarios, just so you could look at the expense of those things, but also understand the situation with bed space limitations, contracts, but also, the inefficiencies with the transportation. But ultimately, where we hoped to get is to discussions about what it would take to maintain the facility here. And I know that we are in tough times. We are doing our best to manage that facility every year. We are coming up with new ways to cut costs, manage the facility more effectively. It has been a learning process for us. And so with our request that you consider scenario 3, we're not asking that you just blindly consent to another year as is. What we'd ask is that through some different cost-saving scenarios and increased revenues, that you consider the facility to continue on as it is. And I'll let Ms. Arndt go through our budget for that.
Okay, so I just wanted to put this slide up to kind of highlight where we were, or where we think we're going to end fiscal year 1920, and then to put in place our original recommended budget proposal, and then what we've been looking at since the last board meeting on this issue. So I mean, you can see the numbers, but what I want to highlight is that in our original recommended budget for the juvenile facility, we had put in, there were some cost-saving measures in there. You can see the expense going down somewhat. Most of that is from combining the top-level responsibilities for the superintendent under the existing juvenile division manager position in the probation cost center. So that was going to result in some cost savings already, and we're, with 3 years of operation behind us, it's getting easier to predict what costs will be for general things like utilities and expendable equipment, the things that you need. That was a real shot in the dark at the very beginning, but it's becoming easier to make it more clear. So we kind of are able to pinpoint our expense better than we were. And it also increased, well, about, yeah, no, the original, it already included an increased level of revenue from out-of-county placements, but it was based on an incremental increase in our revenue. We were looking to renegotiate with counties anyhow, knowing that the cost recovery is an issue. So we were already kind of looking at renegotiating our contracts and how, if we think the other counties would participate. So we already had some revenue in there, stable. So, but then when we came back to the table and thought, well, what can we do to increase revenue? And that's when Dan started really communicating frequently with Amador and Calaveras counties and Mariposa County especially. So what you'll see in that third column is where we proposed to be. That was not in the original recommended budget. That was part of the overall general fund budget.
So that last number, 449, is your discussions with those counties?
Yeah, we're almost there.
Okay, sorry.
Yep. Yes, so yes, it does include that. Okay, so these are the as a department, we're two cost centers, but we're one department. So, if there's no juvenile facility, then the probation department still has to care for those youth. So I'm looking at this. This slide is about looking at us as a whole and how we are trying to reduce our impact to the general fund. And so, what we've got in this slide is in the probation cost center, we are able, the assistant chief probation officer is vacant right now, and it is a critical position for chain of command and a whole lot of reasons. But since it is vacant, we feel that we could keep it vacant for a year at a significant cost savings. And we also think there are opportunities, and Michael Wilson from Behavioral Health is available to talk about exploring some decreased costs in our behavioral health clinician costs by increasing insurance billing or initiating insurance billing. So overall, and in probation, we're proposing an expense reduction of just under $232,000. And then in the juvenile facility cost center, with additional placement revenue due to contract renegotiation, we're looking at an increase of a bare minimum of $142,000. So we're looking at a net positive change for our department of about $370,000, a reduction in impact to the general fund from where we were 10 days ago.
Okay, so one of the key concerns that obviously has been brought up by the board. You can go ahead.
We can skip.
You go ahead.
I'm sorry. This was just, I just wanted to illustrate that we have in this year, in 1920, this has been the first year of real significant participation from other counties in terms of their placement, and that is not at a cost recovery rate. That is at $100 a day rate, which isn't, it's not covering it, but that was where we were, not where we're going with this. So, but what I wanted to say about that, I just put this slide up to illustrate who our main partners are, who's been using our facility, and just to show that in this year, their participation, their need to use our services has nearly tripled. And, it just also demonstrates the need for a regional facility in our area.
Let me interrupt with another question. That's a very good point. It's a very sellable point. Because what is the impact to those other counties if we close? And I don't think we've been talking about that.
I mean, I think it would put us all in competition for increasingly scarce resources.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can you go over that number one more time? Youth, 21, 23, and then the jump to 70? Well,
Yeah, so that, those are just our out-of-county placement numbers. We had 70
Oh, out of-
youth over the,
those are the out-
yeah. And
You can
that's,
see the increase, it's
and that's just
more than
through
tripled.
April.
right.
Yeah, that's just through April. And we did come down because of the COVID-19 restrictions. We're trying to bring the population down, but from what I hear,
Do you know why
they're
that
waiting.
jumped?
They
Did
have
they
a
just
need.
start? Did you know why that jump? Is it because because our rate was $100 basically, completely under everybody
I'm
else?
sorry, I have a hard time understanding you with that.
Do you know why it jumped to 70?
Well, I think part of it, if I had to guess, had to do with the fact that El Dorado's Placerville County, our Placerville facility closed. That was a facility that was used by our two partners there.
Right.
So,
And we were by far the lowest.
well,
Okay.
they were undercutting us in terms of price. El Dorado was, but that's the going rate at the time that we opened was $100. That was what we were paying for with Nevada County. It's what they are paying with Nevada County. Their rates may have gone up to $120 since then, but they were quoting us a rate of $150 beginning in July 1. So the costs are going up, and it's about time that we looked at renegotiating those rates. Obviously,
Okay.
So you're saying the average starting July 1st is about 150?
No,
just
I
said?
think, you'd have to look at a variety of different counties to get that average. When we came up with an average under scenario 2, we looked at Nevada County, we looked at San Benito County, and we looked at Kern County as the three. So I'd say actually the 150 is the low right now. I have heard that Yuba Sutter is below 150, but I think that's really on the low end.
Okay.
And it also comes down to what you're getting, in terms of your contract rate. Are you guaranteed? Is it based on space available, or are they, that's typically, the low rates typically hinge on the availability of the bed. So it's, if it's not available, then you're going elsewhere.
Right. For being open for 3 years, I would have thought that we would have been looking at those going rates on a quarterly or annual basis at least, but
That
moving
started
forward.
within the last year. We've been looking at that, and we are, part of our plan is to do something about that.
moving forward, okay.
Okay, and again, my purpose for putting these figures up are to kind of illustrate that it wasn't such a significant issue. We really didn't have a lot of out-of-county participation until this year, and so that's when it became kind of, we really have them using it. They need to pay
That's a
their
good
fair
point.
share.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about this.
Okay, so this is another one where I know there's a lot of frustration in calculating the average daily cost per youth, and it's a moving target, and different counties will calculate things different ways. We've talked to other counties. We've looked at what our own needs are and what's realistic for us, like what would be a solid calculation of cost, and so this is what we came up with. So I just put it up there. I won't read it out to you, but just so you know how we will be calculating our cost per day, and how we have been and how we will be. This is how we get to these numbers. So for fiscal year 2021, we're projecting at our staffing capacity. So what we're doing is we're taking our total expense and minus our total revenue, including out-of-county placements, because we need them and they need us, and then using that as our basis for our calculation. Not all counties do that. Some counties the ones that you would see that would report a really low average daily rate would be the ones that would base their cost on the total number of beds they have. Like they would base it for us. We have a bed capacity of 30. So obviously, if we take our total expense and divide it by 30, it's a lot less than our staffing capacity. So, and then there's other ones who base it on a large facility that only has a fraction of the population actually in there. So their costs per day are going to look really high.
So what contributed to the decrease in the cost between 1920 and 2021?
To take you back to, it's just our overall reduction in our net income.
It's the increased revenue associated with the out-of-county. Okay.
That and the increased number of youth in the facility. We were running regularly over at 20 for a while. From the winter months really into the spring, we were really high.
Well, I know, but the cost there is based on ADP, so that wouldn't contribute to it. It'd be the increased revenue associated with the out-of-county placements. Thank you.
Yes. And so for comparison, County Administrator's Office helped us out with this. I was struggling with how to show it, but just for to see how it fluctuates based on your average daily population. That's why you're not going to hear it. It is always $200 a day. It depends on how many youth that you have in there over time. But for me, what I'm trying to represent with this slide is that our bottom line is it's more cost effective for our youth when we function as a true regional facility. It's more cost effective for them, and it is for us as well.
So, in looking at that, I think one thing that's important to note is we realize that it's important that we stick to our staffing capacity of 16, and in doing so that we also do our best to get our regional partners to the table and that they utilize the facility as a regional facility. We're starting to see that, and so and you're right, we are overdue in terms of our need to renegotiate these contracts with them, and so that's one of the things that I did recently was reach out to the two chiefs in Amador and Calaveras, and I told them that we needed to renegotiate our rates, and we were going to expect that they pay basically I requested a $200 starting point, given the fact that we only have a $100 rate right now. But that is close to what our rate should be if we are sticking to the 16-bed capacity. We had a number of emails exchanged. I've talked to them both personally by phone, and then we did have a Zoom meeting with the three of us where we came to a tentative agreement. So obviously, let me first off tell you it's difficult to tell your regional partners that the starting point is you're going to double your rates because they are also in a similar predicament as other counties. They're facing reductions. They rely on the same state revenues that we do. They've already taken hits with COVID-19. They could seek out alternative placements for their youth, but one of the key things is that they've really come to appreciate our facility, and that's in talking to both of them. It was pretty clear that they do hold our facility in very high regard. They see it as a valuable tool, and they really did want to come to the table, to do what they could in order to help us stay afloat and manage our facility effectively. So I think that was, one of the key positive points for me was that they really are vested in this facility, especially we've seen Amador really increase their usage and tremendously support, and Calaveras as well. I mean, their usage has been great, but this is how the facility was envisioned to begin with, that to be more of a regional facility to meet all of our needs. And so in my discussions with them, it was clear that they have fixed budgets that they use for the management of their youth, and they've come to rely on having a lower budget. And if they were forced to pay the $200 rate that I requested, they expressed concerns that they would quickly run out of revenue and they wouldn't be able to manage youth effectively, and it would be basically hamstringing them. So one of the things that they proposed was to prepay for beds, to pay a discounted rate on the guarantee that they would have those beds available for them whenever they needed them. One of the things they also expressed concerns or frustrations about was us having them come and get their youth when we had too many youth in our facility. We did it prior to COVID-19, but we also did it during COVID-19. And, you know, they were quick to point out that this isn't, you know, how partners should act. They would like to see us, you know, potentially have to release our own youth too. If they had a guaranteed bed, they would have that expectation. So what they proposed was a contract rate of $150 for a guaranteed prepaid bed. Under this scenario, Calaveras would agree to pay for two $150 beds for the full year, and Amador County would pay for one. Now, the caveat here is that they would pay for that bed whether or not their youth are in that bed. So it would, you know, at least guarantee us revenue at that low minimum level to manage. We also talked about a tiered system. So if they go over their contract bed, they would pay $175 a day. And there wouldn't necessarily be a guarantee, but we would accommodate their youth if we could. So that would be the second rate that they would pay or agreed to pay. And then the third rate we came to an agreement on was a starting point of a $200 a day bed that would serve the higher level of need or care youth, similar to how we've been using the facility to supply additional services and supports to maintain youth out of STRTP placements. We want to offer that same opportunity to them, but the $200 point would just be the starting point depending on what the needs were. We would have some sort of a clause in there that allows us to determine what that rate would be before we decide. But it would be primarily for a commitment type youth that might be there for a while that requires extensive programming. And they both did see some utility to that, and they were willing or interested in exploring that. We have been able to develop a great deal of programming within our facility to manage our own youth locally, and I think we should be offering them that same opportunity. So we had a very productive meeting, and you know, based on this, I would recommend that the board, you know, adopt this, and I will begin the formal negotiation process. But we all have agreed tentatively to this three rate structure to renegotiate our MOUs.
Okay. Is that 100,000? It says as committed to help offset the operational costs. That's just now. That's not
right. So let me get into that one too. That's another one that Pete Judy, Chief of Mariposa County, he called in last week. He's a great ally and advocate for our facility, and you know he's got great expertise in the area of facility management, having run San Diego's facilities and Stanislaus County's facilities in the past. He's also the president of CAPIA, the Facility Institute for Probation in the state. And he knows that we do great things in Tuolumne County. He has his own 4-bed special purpose facility in Mariposa, but he does from time to time use our facility, and he understands, and he's also one of the ones who first sort of engineered this idea on the higher level of care, because he's offered to pay us extra when we take a youth that has the special needs. He wouldn't just send us any youth. He sends us youth that really have higher level of needs. And so when he's done that, he's been willing to pay for, well, on one occasion we had an extra staff person that had to be brought in to make sure that this youth had direct sight throughout their 24/7 throughout their stay. So, yeah, Pete Judy said, "I'll pay that individual's rate in addition to your $100 daily rate," and so it sort of was the beginning point for us to talk about offering that service to other places. And that being said, Pete Judy's overriding goal, I think, is to make sure that we continue to exist as a facility, that he sees the value in this resource in this community. And, he understands also that with DJJ realignment potentially coming, our facility with the higher level of needs and services that we provide allow us to keep our youth here locally when they'd otherwise be going elsewhere. And potentially it would allow us the ability to take their youth that would potentially be placed in DJJ. And, he wants to make sure that we continue on and continue to provide that service. That being said, he made the offer that should we continue on, if the board continues to allow us to exist, that he's willing to donate $100,000 from his revenues to support the programming in our facility. So, yes. So, just in covering some of the other potential revenue streams, in order to seal the deal, I did offer up my assistant chief position for 1 year temporarily, withholding, because I also recognize that I think DJJ realignment is happening. It was proposed in Governor Newsom's May revise. He's made it pretty clear that they're not happy with what they get from the state with the DJJ, and the initial proposals have included that a bare minimum of $250,000 be relied annually to counties to use as commitment dollars for their youth. Now, you could use that money for your own youth, or you could use that money to pay other counties to take your youth. So, I think there's some things coming our way. Another thing that's coming is you guys, the board has adopted our camp program. Unfortunately, the camp program revenues don't come until a full year after you run that program. But we had projected $100,000 to $143,000. We projected low, but based on the fact that we've had a number of those revenue streams hit with COVID-19, and they rely on the same tax base, I actually think those numbers are fairly accurate in terms of what we'll see, but those won't come in until the next fiscal year after this year. So,
before you go on to the next slide, I don't share your what I interpreted to be your opinion of the DJJ realignment decision. I think it's another case of the state trying to save some money and put some additional mandates back down into the counties. And I worry about that realignment because what's typically happened in previous realignments, and I've got two department heads. One of them's an elected department head in this room that have been through the 91, I think it was, and the 2011 realignment, and you don't get full funding in those. And I'm even more skeptical because the funding that does come down typically goes to urban centers at a higher proportion than it does to rural counties. So I'm concerned about that. I am concerned about the potential impact, but obviously we're going to have some additional issues to deal with as associated with that realignment, and I think the Juvenile Justice Center is going to be a key ingredient in that. So, although I disagree with your...
Well, I share your concerns. I do. Believe
Okay.
me, I do. I think that everybody needs to be at the table and paying attention, make sure there's some level of guarantee and that it should be close to what it costs the state. Department of Finance put a price tag of $350,000 per youth committed to DJJ per year, and I think, counties should expect that same level of realignment back if we're going to take that
Okay.
beyond.
So I think this has been covered, and I know this board is aware of the quality of services we provide, so I don't think we need to really belabor this issue anymore.
So I'll make this brief, just talking about some of the cost avoidance that you have with MLR JDF open. We all work, the JCOs there work 12-hour shifts. We've played with multiple different staffing patterns. 12-hour shifts eliminate the most overtime. It's the most efficient. It's the most cost-effective. One of the things we do really pride ourselves on is getting deputies and law enforcement back on patrol quicker. We really expedited our booking process when we opened this facility. Before we had the facility, an arresting officer can expect to spend about 3 hours at the probation department if it was not during business hours and they were arresting a youth. So we try to get officers in and out of the facility in between 5 and 15 minutes. We also utilize our nurse to clear some of the youth that would likely need to be taken to the hospital by arresting officers. And we try to get them back on the streets as fast as we can. Better outcomes, we strive for better outcomes to teach our youth to be self-sufficient. You either pay for them now or pay for them later. If they can't be self-sufficient, they will be on government aid. They'll be incarcerated in the future, and someone's going to have to pay for that. So we run multiple programs to teach them job skills, life skills, so they can take care of themselves. At our facility, everybody has access to our kids. Other agencies, investigators come in and interview kids. We have child welfare services come down and talk to kids. Legal counsel are there. Their probation officer has access to them. Behavioral health services, behavioral health is there meeting with kids. If our youth are out of county, that costs money for those agencies to send their employees wherever our youth are to meet with them. So we have people coming almost weekly before this COVID to see our youth.
And we continue to have, a very strong partnership with our behavioral health department. Amy mentioned some of the possible changes that could happen in terms of revenue in that area. We continue to serve a high population of youth that present at risk of suicide. We did attempt to kind of look at those numbers and potentially equate a cost savings to that, but that's difficult to do. But we continue to see a really high rate of youth that we are stabilizing in our facility and linking to mental health services right away. And, again, that partnership has really allowed us to, when our youth are there, we link them to behavioral health services. So when they walk out of that door, they have a clinician, they have an appointment, and that is really, really impressive.
And I just wanted to conclude, I won't read you the quote, but this comes from the grand jury report last year. It was a fantastic report, very positive. I think it's one thing that, sticks in my mind is that we are really fulfilling the vision of what this institution was supposed to be about. And, we're almost there. Every year we're going to be tinkering with it until we get it mastered. But one thing I think that we have mastered is with regards to our staff. We have great staff. And I think it was Supervisor Campbell who mentioned recently that if you close it down, even if you can reopen it, the idea that you'll be able to bring all those people back, you'll lose your greatest asset, which is our staff. And I think, we have great staff. And that being said, I'd also like to include in that our volunteers and supporters. We have a huge number of people out there that work with our youth in the facility, with the educators. And that being said, I also want to apologize. There were so many people that reached out to us to be a part of this presentation, and we had to limit the amount of information we were covering to try to keep it about real dollars and cents issues. And I apologize to those people that we were not able to include information from within this presentation, but we do appreciate them, and especially the volunteers. And I want to thank you for giving us the time to present this information to you.
Thank you very much for that information. It's it's a lot to cover, and I think you did a very good job of presenting the situation as it is. First, I just wanted to ask, how many calls do we have waiting to comment on this publicly?
We have 2 public comments, and we have Kathy Parker.
Okay, so what I'm going to suggest is we take questions from the board for staff right now. We go to public comment, and then afterward we...
Supervisor Campbell, I think Kathy Parker actually has a brief presentation, so maybe we could do
So let's
that
start with
before
Kathy
public
Parker's
comment.
presentation. We'll take questions from the board, public comment, and then we'll adjourn for lunch. Okay? Everybody good with that? Okay. And thank you very much.
Thank you. I wanted to take this moment to just briefly share 4 slides with you, focused on the complexities of providing educational services for incarcerated youth, not just in a facility that's operational here in our county, but give you a perspective of what happened prior to the development of the juvenile detention facility. And I hope my slide deck is up. In the first slide deck slide that you see, just to remind everybody that the Goldridge Educational Center is a school in the juvenile detention facility. It operates 8 hours a day. It's a year-round school, so there is no summer break or occasions when it shuts down except for professional development and during holidays. The CDE considers students who enroll and come to the juvenile detention facility Tuolumne County residents. So as soon as a student enrolls in the school there, they're considered a Tuolumne County student. But we do understand that there is concern about students coming out of the county and the impacts that occur regarding fiscal concerns when they come to our county. However, we approach all students, and we have a mandate to provide services to all students, regardless of where their county of origin occurred. The Goldridge Educational Center is part of a comprehensive Tuolumne educational community. We have many options for students to matriculate out of high school, and this is another opportunity to keep them in their schooling and to also ensure that when they transfer back into their school program that they do without any penalty to units and credits earned in order to provide transition services for individualized education program services and other partner agency services. We are able to do that because we have a juvenile detention facility in our county. In this particular education center, we provide intensive educational remediation services. Many of our students have come to us, even in middle school arenas behind on their education. In high school, many of them are credit deficit. They have a history of low attendance. They have disruptive behaviors that affect the elementary and school comprehensive school sites, and we're able to work with the students and work with their families to get them back on track and headed toward on-time graduation, which I'll talk about in the second slide and why that's so important. Mandated services for county offices in order to provide services for juveniles who are incarcerated regardless of the location in which they're located include a transition service back to schools after the periods of incarceration. We're required to create a transition plan upon immediate enrollment in a juvenile detention facility. We're required to make sure that that transition plan is implemented when the student is released from the juvenile detention facility. In addition, we have to monitor students up to a minimum of 90 days to ensure that not only services have been put in place, but the student is on track and enrolled in courses, that all units have been transferred over, that IEPs have been held within their mandated time frames. In addition, we are mandated to provide job and community college placement depending on the need of the individual student. And that's regardless of location of school. If you can go to the next slide. In this, I'm talking more about what is the fiscal impact, and it's very hard to capture exactly what the fiscal impact has been on schools and Tuolumne County when we did not have a juvenile detention facility. But I can speak to the fact that when we did have students who were going to placements out of county, that when they did return, that the high school dropout rate was significantly higher pre-juvenile hall time. Many times the students were not provided transition plans from the districts or from the juvenile centers that they had been staying at. It was difficult to receive units or credits from them. It was difficult to determine which classes kids had already taken, and as a result, kids were sometimes repeating classes 2 or 3 times. It's very difficult to work with out-of-county personnel, and I can tell you that the individualized education plans were not provided at a level that would be defensible in a due process hearing. We spent a lot of cleanup time when kids came back to our county, just getting them back enrolled, trying to figure out where they were in their education and to get their IEP goals cleaned up. Our center is WASC accredited. That's very important because WASC accreditation is a high-level review of your educational program. And I know that that played a big part into some of the programs that we're able to provide through some of the work that has been done by previous probation chief Downey, specifically the CAMP program and the Steps to Success. The WASC accreditation allows our students to be eligible for post-secondary funding, allows for them to have transferability of credits to comprehensive school sites. It has resulted in us awarding 6 high school diplomas and 1 GED. But more importantly, what I want to talk about is the 66 successful re-enrollments into comprehensive school sites. That 66 number is reflective of only long-term stays in our facility. Anybody who is below 30 days, we did not include that in the number, even though that number is extremely high. When we look at the 66 long-term stays that we've had over the last 3 years, those students have been successfully enrolled and are on track for graduation. The reason I focus on high school graduation is I have included some statistics that really make the fiscal outcome of how important a high school diploma is. It really illustrates that. We look at just a 10% increase in graduation rates. We look at a correlational drop in murder and assault rates. When we look at a 30.8%, a third of people who are we're looking at a poverty rate for those who don't complete a high school diploma. A third of them are in poverty. And when I talk about poverty, I mean the federal definition of poverty, which is a much lower rate, a much lower number than we talk about when we talk about other classifications of poverty rates. When we look at 68%, that's the statistic for state prison inmates that don't have a high school diploma. And again, another correlation between that. And $292,000, that's the cost to taxpayers over a lifetime. So I heard Mr. Peach say earlier that you pay now or you pay later, and I can see those costs hitting our county as we see people that aren't able to secure jobs, that don't have the skills to access jobs, and how much work we're doing to try and get them caught up through programs that we do through Workforce Investment Board and Motherlode Job Training. In the third slide, what I want to talk about are the other opportunities that have really resulted in a minimized impact on schools. Our students are able to enroll in online college courses through the community college, and that allows for students to have a matriculation into a program like a CTE or vocational ed program that allows them to get job skills, and that's something that's very important for our college, for our high schools. Going into college, it also helps with our students being able to get job skills because that is an important piece of a long-term success metric that we have. And there are some numbers there that show you those students that we have actually enrolled and have completed an online college. Many of them are first-time college goers as well, so that means that we have to provide intensive support. IEPs, again, we're looking at special education services we've managed over the last 3 years. Most of these are not simply for specialized academic services or assistance in understanding some of the core subjects. What a lot of our IEPs are centered around are emotional disturbance. We're looking even at autism. We're looking at some very complicated high-level IEPs. And again, going back to pre-juvenile hall, having worked with that population prior, I can tell you that the IEPs that were served or that should have been served in out-of-county placements were not served. And I saw the direct impact on school districts trying to keep those kids back on track, how to keep them engaged in school. And through this, we have not just served that number of students with IEPs. We've also conducted quite a few child finds that give them the wraparound services that they need, that overall drop cost for schools. And then in addition, we have issued 29 Serve-Safe certifications, which allow students to leave the facility and find useful employment in our county. Finally, what I want to talk about is the last slide deck is the partnership with county government. And I've worked with county probation and behavioral health over the last few years. We've coordinated on grants. We have been partners on many projects. And these are just some of the ways that we have garnered grants, because there's only two ways to balance a budget, right? You either cut costs or you look for revenue. And so we have to look for revenue to provide some of these things that we know are needed. And because of these things, we were able to secure the CAMP program, Steps to Success work that was done, and then as a result, results in higher revenue for the juvenile detention facility. So I'm not going to read all of those to you, but these were grants that were written by the Tuolumne County Superintendent Schools Office, mostly by myself, because I believe that if you write successful grants, you need to keep writing successful grants. One that I'm really proud of is the Smile Keepers grant that was written by Erica Dossie, who is known as the Tooth Fairy in our office, but more importantly, she's an oral health clinician, and she helps write our grants for preventative and referral dental services for youth. That is a service that many of our kids have never received when they're in that facility. They receive that. We're currently working on a mental health student services grant and a Department of Justice Stop School Violence grant. So all of these things benefit either through training or additional resources or things that help prevent our youth from recidivism as they leave the facility. And more importantly, this is the most important thing, the relationships that are formed in that facility, not just between the JCOs, the probation officers, through the educational staff, but the relationship between everybody in the community and the volunteers that come in and work with them. That is immeasurable. That's not a number we can attach to. And as a result, our students, our kids, feel more connected to our community. They feel connected in a way that makes them feel valuable and makes them want to do better. I can't tell you the numbers of students that are out there or kids that are out there that are successful because you don't know who they are. You don't know who they are because they paid their price to society, they took advantage of the rehabilitation services, and they're out there in our community doing really well. And as a result, we don't want to bring them forward and say, tell us about your story, because they did it. They were successful. And I want to see that continued in our county. I think that there are ways that we can work together to find additional revenue. And I will take any questions that you have at this time because I was asked to be brief on this.
Thank you, Superintendent Parker. Are there any questions from the board for the superintendent?
Just a comment. I just want to thank you for pointing out all the other things of benefit that the center provides. I think for the public that are watching, and I hope there's a lot of them, that they see the depth of what is really going on there. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and Carl Rodefer, I'd just like to echo that. I think a lot of times when you're focusing on budgets, that you're focused on the here and now. I think one of the things that we need to remember is the long-term value to our community, that kids that go through this center, or this detention center, what the long-term value of them as human beings coming out on the other end is. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. Are there questions from the board for staff, or would we like to just go into public comment?
Actually, I do. I don't want a public conversation though, but I do need to talk with Rebecca real quick. I don't know if we can take a 2-minute break, but I need to get some clarification on some numbers.
is it? Okay.
Yeah,
How about we go into public comment and then,
sure. Before we start talking about,
and
after
then-
public comment, I'd like to.
yeah, and so after that, we'll take a break, and then at that time, you can have your
Listen.
question answered.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. How many folks do we have waiting on the phones? Okay. So I'm just going to say we've got a lot of ground to cover today, and so if we could keep our comments to 3 minutes and be respectful of those who are coming behind you, who also have opinions that they'd like to air. And Clerk, would you please read the instructions for participating in public comment one more time in case there is anybody interested in calling in?
Yeah, the phone number is 533-6581.
Okay. Let's start with the first person.
Hi, Mike, are you there? Okay, just a moment, please. You're on the board. Go ahead for the board.
You good? This is Mike. Can I get a hold on?
Yes, please.
You're on.
This is Mike, and I'm calling on behalf of the Columbia County Juvenile Justice Commission. I was sworn in July 2017 to oversee operations of the Juvenile Justice Detention Center. We've done that job as prescribed by law, and also we did it because of our devotion to the well-being of the children in the facility within our county. You placed the center under threat of closure for reasons of your own, which I'm told are now being reconsidered.
Mike, we're having kind of a hard time hearing you. Are you on a speakerphone or are you?
I spoke of preparations for a warm closure, and I'm not here to talk about that. I'm talking about keeping it open.
Mike, can you hear me?
Our commission is concerned with the well-being and care of detained children. That's the reason we volunteered to serve and continue to serve.
Turn off his speaker so that we can hear him a little better.
To the well-being of these same children.
Could you pick up the phone and ask him to turn off his speaker so we can hear him a little better?
You'll have to excuse me and bear with me. At my age, everyone is youthful. And to me, these people are children. I challenge you to join me in looking at them as such. The figures originally used to justify closing were at best inflated and at worst unrepresentative of actual cost. Ms. Parker has already spoken.
Let's go ahead and
some of the major overlooked expenses of closing.
Just hold the mic up to the phone.
Ms. Riggs failed to include the expenses in her proposal to close. The cost of paying other counties to house, feed, medicate, educate, treat. Hello?
Mike, we're having a hard time hearing you. Can you turn off the speakers to your phone, your computer, please?
Sure.
You want him to talk into the phone without the speakerphone on?
Yeah, that would be better.
Okay.
So start over, Mike. Just start over. Take the speakerphone off.
It's off. It's off.
You got it off?
Yeah. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, may I start over, please?
Let's take it from the point where you left off just now. Did you have much more you wanted to say? We caught what you said for the most part.
I'm having a real hard time hearing you.
Okay.
Let him talk.
Mike, we're getting direction from County Council. They want you to run through it one more time. So go ahead and start from the top. We'll give you a fresh 3 minutes, and we'll have to cut you off after 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. This is Mike Nick, and I'm calling on behalf of the Tuolumne County Juvenile Justice Commission. The commission was sworn in July of 2017 to oversee operations of the center. We have done that job as prescribed by law, and also we have done it because of our devotion to the well-being of children in the facility. Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Much better.
Okay, you have placed the center under threat of closure for reasons of your own. I'm told now they're being reconsidered. That's good. Keep it open. Mr. Hawk spoke mainly, I think, of preparation for a warm closure. I'm speaking in favor of keeping it open as is. Our commission is concerned with the well-being and care of the detained children. That's the reason we volunteered to serve and continue to serve. I come before you to encourage you to share our concern and commitment to the well-being of these same children, much as Mr. Rutherford just mentioned in his response. I'm aware that the accepted term for the young people is youth. Well, you're going to have to bear with me. At my age, everyone is youthful. And to me, these young people are children. I challenge you to join me in looking at them as such. The figures originally used to justify closing were at best inflated and at worst unrepresentative of actual cost. Ms. Parker has already spoken to one of the overlooked major expenses of closing. And the cost of paying other counties to house, feed, medicate, educate, and transport these children is sizable. According to public reports, it was never in the equation that your CAO provided. The worst of this scenario is that it involved giving up our children in terms of the level of care, giving up on our children in terms of the level of care and concern being provided here in Tuolumne County. Surely you can't want to send that message or be a part of carrying it out. I know some of you have visited the facility. I know Mrs. Brennan has, and she's well aware of the value of that facility to troubled children. Please do not tell us that you're making this decision on the basis of dollars. You must not allow yourselves to be that insensitive to the needs of the children. You have a model facility chosen by the state to show how it should be done to other counties. We have a staff whose professionalism, devotion to the job, and care for the children is second to none anywhere in the state. The devotion of staff to their mission was exemplified by Mike Arndt's response last week. Mike is the heart and soul of this center, and I hope he will reconsider his resignation. I also come before you on behalf of the children in our community who desperately need the help being provided here. We cannot afford to send them away, and you know that. I come before you on behalf of those who have been at your center and have moved on in their rehabilitation process.
Mike,
I'm here on behalf of the teachers, administrators, and other students in our community
Mike,
who need the center for placement of troubled or dangerous children to get the help they need.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. We're going to have to move on to the next person.
Well, you won't let me finish? You've got about 20 seconds. I've been waiting a long time, Ryan.
Talking. So let's go ahead and move on to the next person. And again, thank you very much.
Yes, I am. Go ahead. You're live with the board. All right. I'd just like to say my name is Russ Hamilton, and I was actually one of the original staff members there. And, I was hired on by Mike, and, I was just one of those people that really was, I guess I was really sold on his vision of it, or rather, he sold to me. And I think that, it'd be a real shame to lose something like the center there, because I think it really serves, a greater purpose, and a greater purpose that, you can't necessarily break it down into just, gains or money, because, I think there's an intangible asset there, and it's just too impossible to be able to, actually figure out, what that's worth. But I think it's worth a lot to the kids. And I think that, there's just, really, three things you can do. You can do nothing with these youths and let them, continue to, victimize people in the county, or you can farm them out to all these other county facilities that, are really just not as interested in their welfare as ours, and expose them to a much more or a much greater level of criminal sophistication by the gangs and so forth that inhabit those facilities, and then you still end up with the same problem. They still continue to matriculate on to state prison. Or we can treat them here, we can fix them, and we can make them productive members of society. And I just really wish that the Board of Supervisors would take that intangibility into account, because I think that's something that something that we know that it works and replace it with something where we're just guessing. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments.
And I currently have a son who is incarcerated at the Mother Lode facility at this time. Since 2019, April of 2019, he's been incarcerated for a total of more than 200 days. My son has underlying mental health issues, and he has PTSD, anxiety, and ADHD as well. And he unfortunately turned to substance abuse very early on to deal with his issues. And the only help that I have been able to get has come through the county and probation. Before he was put on juvenile probation, we dealt with continuing running away, a couple overdoses, and once probation got involved, yes, it got worse before it got better, but it has been the only help that my son has been given. Right now, he is able to see his actual counselor weekly via Skype, and the facility facilitated that for us. I don't believe that if he gets shipped 2.5, 3 hours away, that's going to continue to be available for him. We recently started participating in family counseling at the facility as well. I don't know if any of you are aware, but unless it is court ordered, once your child is 12 years of age or older, they do not have to participate in counseling services, and you cannot force them to do so. So as a parent, my hands were tied. Now the probation's involved, there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel. I definitely it would be a huge hardship on my family if my son is moved. He still has more than 40 days of incarceration left, and I cannot travel once a week 2-3 hours. I have small children at home, and it would be a humongous hardship on my family. And I think all the rehabilitation that's gone on and all the counseling services and everything that we've made with forward progress by moving him that far away would completely cause our family to go backward in our progress. I think that it's crazy to me to build a facility that costs so much money and 3 years later close it down. I commend probation on doing all the work they've done in this short few days to cut the budget, and I'm very, very thankful for them. Everyone there, Mike is an inspiration to my son, and he talks about him every time I see him. Morgan, Steve, all involved. Without their help, I may have a child in the grave today. So I just want to thank everyone involved, and I really want the board to consider the youth, consider the families, and really just, I pray that you rethink closing the facility down. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, we have at least 2 other people, and we will have the next person coming up shortly.
Thank you for holding. Are you ready to speak to the board? Okay. Just a moment, please.
Yes. I'm going on.
Let the board, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Suzanne B. Meister. I am a wife, a mother to 6 children, VP of B. Meister Company, Inc., and Wireless Blue Technology Services Company, and I represent the Tuolumne County citizens. I represent the volunteers at the facility because I am a volunteer with Hidden Treasures of the Sierras. I have been at the facility as a volunteer since June. There are so many citizens against this closure. I can't even tell you guys. Currently, the online petition has over 4,000 citizens who have signed the petition, and it started not even 24 hours ago. This hasn't even gotten off the ground yet. I asked Tuolumne County citizens to go to saveourhall.com to donate because we are
raising funds to save this facility, we will protest this closure. We don't need to be combative. This is a peaceful protest. But I believe you are not fighting against flesh and blood. I believe personally that you are fighting against God and the citizens of Tuolumne County. I know about this because I used to be a Satanist, and now I am a Christian, and I follow Jesus Christ. So I have seen a lot, and I know what the supernatural looks like, and I know what miracles look like. I have had a raging fire come within 15 feet of my home with my children and I in it, and I stood in front of that fire and prayed, and God completely saved my home and our lives, and I didn't even have smoke damage to my house. That's an example of the power of prayer. And there's thousands of citizens right now praying across the county to stop this closure, any kind of closure. We'll do more than just pray. We're going to be doing ongoing fundraising to support this facility. Please know that Tuolumne citizens are going to rise up and fight this closure and donate to stop it. Go to saveourhall.com. Thank you, board members. We love you guys. We love you so much. Carl Rodefer, you're my neighbor. I love you. I care about you. We're not against you guys. We're for you guys. But we really believe that you're making the wrong decision, and we are praying and hoping and praying that you do the right thing and stop the closure. Thank you very much for hearing my comments.
And thank you very much for making those comments. Do we have anyone else waiting? Okay.
Okay. Oh, is it my turn? Yes. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Jackie, and I have a niece who has been in and out of your facility on multiple occasions, and I've been up there, and I think the facility is awesome, and I think that you guys really need to take into consideration the rehabilitation aspect of what this facility does. They're really involved in the youth and getting them to succeed. And it's not only, the probation department. I mean, it's all of the officers and everybody that works there. I think that there needs to be a local facility because the whole point in everybody, getting this facility up there was so that you didn't have to transport your youth outside of your community. And I think, with all of the folks that work there, most of them probably do live within the community, and so they're more invested in seeing the children succeed because they are within their own community. And I think that you would lose that if you're to send your the children elsewhere. I know Stockton isn't too far, but Stockton is night and day when it comes to Tuolumne County and the citizens there. So I definitely think that it just needs to be kept local, and I think it's good for the community, and the ongoing rehabilitation, because ultimately the children are our future, and if we're not investing in them, then then we're letting them down. And, there are children, obviously we don't want children to be incarcerated, but sometimes they need to be put back onto a path because of, their upbringing, or, maybe they have mental instabilities and things of that nature. And so a program, or the program that you guys have there, I think that they're on the road to success. The facility has only been open a few years, and I think shutting it down is way too early, and I really think you guys should reconsider. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Bye-bye. Okay, do we have any more public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to propose we adjourn we recess until 1:45. Oh, sorry, 1:15 is only. Okay. So let's adjourn until, let's recess until 1:30. Yeah.
Okay.
I was way off. Subtract, take that first one off. Yeah, I'll send it. Yeah, I'll mix you what I can do on here. Anybody? Because I didn't know they were going right there. Right back to me. So, I'll get you everything.
All right, the time is 1:30. We will now reconvene the meeting, this special meeting of the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors. Clerk, would you please reread the third item on our agenda today?
So this is consideration of approving direction to staff regarding the options for operation of the Motherlode Regional Juvenile Detention Facility.
Okay. So, are we waiting on something?
No, sorry.
Okay.
I was just noticing that the laptop is low, so I.
Oh, okay.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to start on the far end with Supervisor Gray.
Okay. First, staff, thank you very much for the presentation. I think you did a good job of pointing out the situation to the public. They don't always see what the board members see and what staff sees. I want to ask CEO Riggs a question in general. I don't want to ambush you on this, so you don't have to answer me if you don't want to. But we've been discussing a warm closure here today. We have not been discussing a closure of the facility. Because my understanding was that if we close it completely, we're on the hook for $16 million or so. Is that correct?
There are definitely some guidelines within our contract that says that we have some obligation, but we would need to work with the state. So I can't say yes or no. It depends on where we would work
I'll
out
take
with them.
that.
Yes, sorry, I know that's not.
But there's could be a probability.
There could be.
That it would happen. And so under this warm closure, we're going through all of these numbers and everything. Is there an actual amount that we would save under warm closure compared to what we're doing now?
So a couple things. The update that we did during the last board meeting on 5/19 was just an update that we did get approval to move forward with that. And if you would remember, that slide said potential savings of up to $600,000. And we said there's a lot of different ifs, like the number of Tuolumne County youth that we had and other expenses that might go in there. So at this point, knowing that we could possibly have 3 youth placed into a group home in addition to the placements, I would say that at this point, we would not have any savings that we would be recognized if it was closed in any way at this point.
Okay, thank you. I've got this letter, and I should have kept it a little bit cleaner instead with all my notes on it from the judges. And Judge Polly, DuTemple, Bosco, Boyack, Provost. And then we had Judge Sagerstrom speak the other day. You know, as supervisors, one of our difficult tasks is to make a decision. I mean, that's why we're here, make these hard decisions. And so, through my life process, and I shared this with the county council the other day about, how do I come to a conclusion on what is the best way to go? And I've always tried to use the business judgment rule. In other words, you take in all the considerations that you can get from the people that really know what you're talking, what the subject matter is, because we as supervisors, we don't know it all. So we have to go to those experts, and we have to, I hope, listen to them, and then make that best decision that we can based on the best information. And, when I look at this letter, and it's, there's 50 years of judicial service here in this letter, and are signed by judges with over 50 years of experience. And so I'm thinking, am I smarter than these judges with this 50 years of experience? I'd like to think I am, but I know I'm not. I know most of them. Well, I know them all over the years because I've been around a long time. So, in looking at this letter, looking at the presentation, I just have to say, when we built this detention center, we built it for the right reasons. We did. And I just can't bring myself to even think about closing it at this point in time and not trying to figure out a way to bring more money, more revenue in, and I think staff is committed to do that. I'm sure they are, and we've got so many areas that we need to consider. But this one, in my mind, I'm just going to have to make my decision based on the best information I have, and that information is that it's the right thing to have, and that's pretty much my position.
Okay.
Supervisor Rodover.
Yeah, I also want to thank staff, and I want to thank the members of the public that all spoke. I want to thank our superintendent of schools. I want to thank several of the other department heads and stuff that have talked to me offline about this. Doing budgets is probably the most thankless and difficult thing that a board of supervisors in a county does. And I think that I hate having to cut things and making decisions on what to cut and what not to cut. But as I've said, I've been to that facility at least 3 times since it's opened, and I may have been there more, I don't remember. But I can remember 3. It is a fantastic facility. For those of you that are in the public, and I know there's a lot of people that in the public that, whether it's letters to the editor or just talking on the street, really think that this is a waste of money. I would invite you, and I'm sure the staff at the Juvenile Center would be more than happy to give you a tour of that facility and show you what's going on there. If you haven't done that, I'd ask you to hold your judgment until you do, because it really is a great facility. And I do believe it's the best in California. I don't know that. I haven't visited the other ones, but I can't imagine a better one. And we've been told it's one of the very best. I was with Linda Penner when she did the tour down there, who is the, what's her title? Help me out.
Chair of the Board of State Community Corrections.
There we go, Chair of the Board of State Community Corrections. And she said it was the best, and I trust that she has seen at least a vast majority of the other ones. So it is a good facility. And also for the public that looks at the price tag of operating at roughly $1.5 million, it's $1.6 million in 1 year and $1.4 million in another, but let's just round it off to $1.5 million. You're not going to save $1.5 million by closing it. It isn't going to happen because of the contract that we signed for the grant money that we got. We don't know because we haven't started pursuing with the state what a full closure would be, and we saw the price tag for a warm closure. We're only going to save a couple $100,000, and that's a lot of money, and I grant you it is. But we're also closing that gap as well. So I'm going to. My preference is to direct staff to leave it as it is. But I also, and I talked to Dan a little bit offline, I think that we haven't done as good a job in the past as we should have at the chief probation officer level for sure, but also as a board of supervisors we haven't. We were able to scramble around and close the gap a little bit on funding. Thank you, Dan, for doing that and the hard work, and thank your counterparts in the other counties for stepping up as much as they could. But you, as I told you, you putting pressure on your counterparts to go try and push a noodle uphill with their board of supervisors, you know what it's like pushing the noodle with us. So I think we need to get involved a little bit more and make this a true regional detention facility, because honestly, everybody's hurting for budget bucks this year, and I get that. But the next time this comes around, if I'm sitting in the chair, I'm going to have a hard time justifying spending Tuolumne County revenues on kids from other counties. I think we have to work our way, and it may be a several-year process. I'm sorry. But I do think that as a board and as the chief probation officers of the various counties, we need to engage and get to where everybody's paying their fair share. So with that said, and with that as a recommendation to my cohorts here on the board, that we pursue something like that. I don't know what it looks like, but I'll let CAO Riggs come back with an idea or whatever. But I'm going to support leaving the Juvenile Justice Center open. And again, Dan, thank your counterparts, because I know they're doing that in a very tough budget environment of their own. Thanks.
Okay. Supervisor Kirk.
All right, Hawk. For you, I'll take my mask off. Thank you. Okay. You guys had a lot of time this morning to present, so everybody listening, I appreciate the few minutes I'm going to take up. I do have some questions that I need some answers to. But I just want to say to a few people who called in, Russ actually worked with that guy in the prison. Good dude. So, Russ, thank you for calling in. Peach, I think I played soccer with you growing up. So we're all members of one community, okay? So this is business. This is not personal. This is no reflection of you guys. As a board, we're responsible. We own this. This was created by the board. It's ours to deal with moving forward, okay? I just want to make that real clear before I get into my spiel. I'm going to go through this, and when these questions that I have, real short, simple answers will do just fine. 20, 30 seconds tops. If I need more elaboration, please, I will give that. But it's important to me because information, facts are important. Okay. So on page 3, when we talk about the recent poll regarding the juvenile facility, Dan, I appreciate the fact that not all polls are science, not all polls are accurate. And the reason why it's important I bring this up is because I have this in my office. This is a poll that was done and paid for, scientifically presented. And nowhere on here does it talk about the juvenile hall. And I'm just bringing that up because when I campaigned, I heard a very different story from the constituents which I represent in this community. I just want to make sure that's fair. I know with my motherlode blogs, they can be manipulated. People can go on there, erase cookies, vote multiple times. I've seen it happen. So I just want to make sure that's clear. On page, could you go to the slide? I just want to, on me, it's page 3. It's youth served right there. So when you say unduplicated youth, does that mean like a kid not being counted twice? Correct. Okay, I just want to clarify that number. And again, I would have brought these up during the meeting, but you guys were in a flow and I didn't want to disrupt that, so excuse me. I am on page 5, and I am under slide reaching out to counties with juvenile halls. Next one. Oh, that is it. Sorry. No, it's the same. There you go. Okay. So when I look at these counties, San Benito, their chief quoted a daily rate, and again, I get this is if we were to send our kids out to them. 240, Merced's 290, Kern County's 160, 185. Nevada's 150. When I do the average going rate for those communities, for those juvenile halls, are 213.75. So I put out that number, 213.75, because I don't know where the final decision is going to be, but I think 150 isn't asking enough from our counterparts. I think we should present information based on the average, and that should be negotiated. That's my take on it. I'm on page 7 when we're talking about the average daily population. Nowhere in this report did I see anything about the average length of stay. The last time I saw something, I believe it was 40.1 days or 41 days. Do we have an idea?
Yeah. Yes, I kept it in the notes just in case we needed it. So for calendar year 2017, it was 28 days. And for calendar year 2018, 63 days. And again, in calendar year 2019, 63 days.
Okay. And the reason why I bring that up is I think it's important. Kathy Parker kind of talked on it a little bit about the relationships that these kids build with the staff in that facility. I have never seen a report that says an average length of stay anywhere near 28 to 63 will rehabilitate anybody. What will rehabilitate people is obviously those relationships and long-term treatment. So I want to make sure it's really clear that when people out there think that we're putting a kid into our hall, I worked in juvenile probation. My just personal view is most of those kids, and I worked with gangs in Merced, by the time they were 12 or 13, it was a real struggle to bring them back. And it didn't matter if they were in the hall for a year, 2 or 3. Once they, it's somebody called in saying, we're fighting against God if we close the juvenile hall. That's fine. You can have your opinion. I'm a Christian, but I'm sorry. We live in a broken world, a broken society. So my belief is, unless the family unit is restructured and brought back together, we're not responsible and we're not going against God based on if we were to close the hall. That's just a tidbit. But it's important that people understand you're not going to rehabilitate people. I've never seen a state that says you will do that in 63 days or less. So,
just to follow up on that, I will say that we've had commitments as long as a year or more with our youth, and it depends on the level of the offense and any other variety of factors that are considered. But it's a juvenile court that usually makes the decision on the length of stay.
Right. Okay. And I understand that. I'm just looking at the average. Staffing plan under warm closure. Mr. Peach, you had mentioned, and I'm just clarifying, you had mentioned that if we did go to warm closure, that part of the positions moving forward is, and I'm just clarifying this, would there be a new probation officer specifically for home electric monitoring system for those 7 kids? Because it didn't, the math didn't add
Our
up.
staffing plan included 1 senior DPO, 2 DPOs, and 2 probation techs. We tried to drive down the cost by using the probation techs as opposed to all DPOs.
Okay.
So yes, we would have probation officers that would be assigned to supervise kids on electronic monitoring.
But would a new one be created specifically for that?
They would be having, they would do that, but also running programs and other things as well.
Okay. I guess I'm just, again, I'm getting into the weeds a little bit more than I usually am. I just want to be clear that a position isn't being created specifically for those 7 for electronic monitoring system.
They wouldn't just be doing electronic monitoring, there'd be other duties.
Okay. Page 9, it says warm closure scenario 1, placement contracts with multiple counties. The facility contracts, can you go over that real quick, what the facility contracts is?
So that is, so the average I'm basing that on, I'm pretty sure it was $187.50 a day. So I'm basing it on the average of Nevada, Kern, and San Benito counties. And I'm pretty sure that it comes up to $187.50. And so that's based on $187.50 per day times 7 times 365 days a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm jumping ahead, but in the cost savings, is Kathy Parker's, the educational piece, that contract, is that part of the cost savings included in there?
We only included probation's budget.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Except for we did have the estimated STRTP placement number there too, but that wasn't part of the total.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see if I have a few more. I'm on page 11 of my paper. It's warm closure transportation costs. And again, finally, this is nice. I finally got a number because I've had numbers thrown all over the place. But if we were to go warm closure and we did transportations, excluding Merced, if we didn't have a deal with them, it'd be $316,000. So thank you for getting that to me. My question is regarding the 2.7 full-time positions. Are those transportations based on using peace officers, probation officers to do those transports?
We looked at a combination of a probation officer and a probation technician, just as a way to kind of save money. So
Okay.
we do a partner transport.
Have you ever looked and considered not utilizing probation officer staff to lower the cost for that?
Well, in the past, we had a number of retired annuitants. We used to have a position called a probation transport officer, and that was when we had the ability to rely on a number of retired annuitants. You know, at that time, we had 4 retired deputy probation officers that were working with us, and in addition to a number of retired correctional officers that we could rely on regularly for that. Unfortunately, under the CalPERS rules, we lost all of those staff after 2 years. There was a time period where we just pretty much got wiped out. And we did away with that classification because we weren't able to recruit. You know, it was a relatively low-paid position, but it pretty much relied upon having that network of retirees that were wanting to do this kind of work.
Right.
So it's not something that we look at for the future, just because we weren't able to recruit at that time. So we did away with it and looked at probation technicians. We did use probation technicians for transports.
So, well, I guess when the hall came online, were you using those services up to the time the hall came online?
Right.
with
Well, we
retired
started
annuitants?
changing our business practices to reflect, better safety, and like it was been mentioned, where we had a youth jump out of the window. The youth that we deal with and the adults that we deal with have definitely increased in risk, and it's the youth more than anyone that will often take do crazy things on us and try to jump out windows in the middle of a transport or something like that, or escape. We've had many youth try these things over the years. So as a way to improve safety, we typically do 2-person transports, but we usually have 2 youth in the car at the same time. We also, there's other ways. This isn't perfect, we did miss some things here where there were some transports we didn't consider. But then there are situations where we do have a van where we could have used, potentially had to transport like 3 or 4 youth at one time. It's impossible to really know, what to expect. But this is based on our best guess. And if we had to have staff regularly available for that, we'd want to add these classifications. And, we looked initially at lots of different formulations of how to make this plan work. And this was the cheapest way we could come up with. But, we're open and receptive to input.
Okay. Page 12, revenue increase and cost savings measures, where you're giving up the assistant chief probation officer.
I'm actually recommending that I
freeze.
temporarily freeze that position.
And I commend you for that, but I think, just personally, I think that's going to be a lot of work on your shoulder and other people's shoulders, so.
Well, and I appreciate you acknowledging that, because my wife's pointed that out to me as well, and I don't want to have to do it for 2 years or 1 year. I think I can.
So I commend you for that, because that shows great leadership. My concern, though, is that I know we're in a financial issue this year, but that's obviously, it's not going to be an ongoing savings. So the net positive change, yes, is going to be 370. But obviously, it's going to be 140 after that, and so that's.
Well, when we talked about it, I think we will see. We put in the bare minimum revenue that we'll expect under the guaranteed rate, bed rate, and also the 100,000 from Mariposa County. I think there is a good likelihood that DJJ realignment will happen, and there will be some funding to that. But the reason I was willing to do it for a year is because we know that our camp program's coming online, and we'll begin to see revenues for that year after next. And
that fiscal year?
Yeah.
17, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I spoke with Amy. There was, offline, there was a few concerns about numbers, trying to get some clarification and some accuracy with some numbers. So, and then talking about numbers, I'm just being transparent with you guys. When I look at page 14 under monthly placement costs, I'm concerned that we're projecting things. And I get projections, but when I look at the actuals in the past, with the number I came up with instead of 6,388 is what the cost is for placement is 12,720. So when I keep hearing this number thrown around about foster care, we're already almost there with that daily cost per kid right now. And I got those numbers. Where did I get those numbers from? Here they are. I got those numbers, 2018-19 cost per day range, it's around 417 to 468. So when you do the math on that, it ends up being 12,720. So I don't really like this projection, because I don't know how accurate that is.
So, yeah, this is the thing that I know it frustrates everybody. You hear it costs $500, it costs $300. What does it really cost? And so that is why, and so, yes, as far as the thing that we were talking about between what Rebecca provided you and what I have, well, how do I organize this? Let me just go back to okay, so going back to the calculation, what if it felt like we really needed was our calculation that made sense for our county, as a regional center. And so we're settling on that. And like I said, different counties will calculate different ways to their best advantage, or to show what they need to show, or in the best way they understand how. So this calculation is not the standard calculation across the state, but I think it's the best calculation for our county operating as a regional center. Okay. And so that calculation stands. And so basically, I recalculated the numbers, and I found that, yeah, that these are accurate numbers based on this calculation. So I think what we need is to have a standard that we use always, and that's kind of our measure. Because if you calculate it based on the actual number of people in beds per year and the actual expense per year, it's going to be all over the map. You're just not going to have a standard.
Well, I get that, but past practice is usually a good indication of future practice. And what we're dealing with is a monthly cost per kid of $12,700 based on last year's. And the year before that, it was more. Obviously, there is a downward trend, but to go from 311 potentially to 358, there's about a $50 difference. But then when we suddenly in 1 year go from 210 to 375, we're talking about a $150 difference. So to me, I can't bank on a regional center when we don't have. To me, it kind of feels like we're right back to where we were when this hall was being built. We're negotiating, and it's good. And I thank you, Mr. Hawk, for those negotiations because they're happening, but they're still pending. They're still not there yet. And so we speak like we're going to have a regional center, and I hope we do, but these are numbers as if we are going to have a regional center, which we don't have right now.
Just to add to that, in asking for quotes from other counties and talking to them, this is kind of the standard rate of calculation that they're using. So it makes sense for us all to kind of use the same calculation when we're doing that. And that's one of the reasons we did this. We also know that, we need to know what our target number is, because if we go over that number, then it really does cause impacts on our staff, and we have to bring in overtime to cover that. And so, when we shot for 16, I think it's an accurate number, and it's based on a similar calculation that other counties are using to determine their daily bed rates for other counties.
But again, it's dependent on if we regionalize with these other counties. Right. Which we're working on, but it hasn't happened yet. Page 15, I'm getting to the end of it. Page 15 talks about the $100,000 donation by Mariposa. That's great, but again, that is not an ongoing solution. It helps this fiscal year, but not ongoing. So, okay. So that's it for that. I just want to be really clear. I wrote this note because somebody called in. Somebody said, how horrible would it be for us to send kids to Stockton instead of keeping them here? And I get that, and I agree with it. But in the same tone, we've had conversations about if DOJ or if CYA breaks down and starts sending those kids back to the counties. We're talking about, you brought up the fact last board meeting that we may be contracting to get some of those high-risk offenders. So some people are using the argument, don't send kids to Stockton, but yet we're talking about bringing kids from potentially Stockton, those high-risk sex offenders, to our county to help offset the cost. So that argument shouldn't be had if that were to take place in the future. If it's about protecting the kids from going down to the valley, then we shouldn't be accepting kids from the valley who are going to be high-risk offenders in the future. Just making that clear.
If I could follow up on that.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is using the realignment monies to pay for our own kids. What we've seen previously in 2016, I'm glad you brought this up because I think it's something we didn't touch on. In 2016, we sent 3 youth to DJJ, formerly CYA. Since the facility is open, we haven't sent any youth to DJJ. And so what we're talking about is using our realigned monies to keep our youth here locally.
And receiving that money.
And we're also talking about using our other regional partners' funds potentially so that they can send their youth to our facility. They're already sending them there. And so it's going to potentially supply a revenue stream to do that. We're already finding, the juvenile court has insisted that we provide that level of service and prevent youth from going to DJJ. We're already doing a lot of these things. So it's where we see some potential for ongoing future revenue.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going to make a few comments and statements and go from there. My concern is we don't have, although we're working on it, we don't have any firm contracts in place. I know the framework's there, but I don't want a repeat of what happened prior to me getting on the board where we had conversations, but then things fell through. So it's important to me that we have those secure contracts moving forward should the board decide to keep the hall open. regarding the foster care placement, it's my interpretation, and the judge isn't here, but I believe that is at the discretion of the judge to place those juveniles in foster care if we did a warm closure. So when on the presentation, when we say that 3 are going to be placed, I believe that's at the discretion of the judge. So I don't know the details, but is that clear? Is that clear? It'd
That's
be at
correct.
the judge's discretion.
So looking backwards, we know we had 3 youth previously that had sex offenses, and our judge insisted that we provide a certified sex offense treatment program for those youth.
Okay.
And working with HSA, they were willing to fund that so that we wouldn't have to do that. And the reason we did that is because the judge essentially said, if you don't have services available for these youth in the community, I will put them into STRTPs.
Okay.
And so we have the same situation now where there's 3 youth that require that level of service and care. It's not an inflated number or anything. I think that's a very reasonable assumption that there would be 3.
So those
Essentially,
fostered are specific to the sex.
It's not. I don't want to get into the details, but I know that just based on the types of needs of these youth, that's what they would be looking at.
Okay. So I know Carl, Supervisor Rotifer and Supervisor Gray, I know we haven't had a vote, and they're leaning towards obviously leaving it open. So here's where I stand on it. There's 2 or 3 things I'd like to have done before, so I can make an informed decision. I want contracts with Amador, Calaveras County, Mariposa County, whatever counties are in discussion. I looked at here on the presentation. I guess one of them is with waiting the approval of the presiding judge. So I would like that to take place before I make a decision. I think the average cost should be re-reviewed. I think 150 is still too low, but again, I don't know all the numbers you guys are looking at. I'm just looking at the ones that were presented, and the average is $213.75. And then when it comes to numbers, I know this is moving fast, and obviously it would take the full board to agree with this recommendation, but I really need these numbers verified through a second opinion. I think it's too important to skim over these numbers. And I still think there might be some cost savings. Again, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but just so you know, I ran a DRC in Merced probation, and I was the probation officer, and we had 1 OT. So I think there's possibly other ways, if we did a warm closure, that there could be some cost savings. And I like to see what those cost savings might be. So, and then, you guys, this is the big picture. We're moving fast. We're making cuts. But I feel like some of this stuff's kind of getting front-loaded. I cut a contract last week for Parks and Rec. We're talking about cutting this, keeping it open or closed. We're going to have more discussions about Visitors Bureau. We're going to have more discussions about Parks and Recs and Library. And I kind of want the full view. And the rest of the board might disagree with me, but if I'm going to be cutting libraries, Parks and Rec, I want to know what my option is at that moment. I don't want to make this decision to keep it open or close it when I haven't had the full purview of what's coming later on today and also next week. So I don't feel like I have enough information to make an informed decision. I do really like what you guys have done and how you've been working it. Chief Hawks, I know you jumped into the seat, and before that, I believe you were with adult probation, correct?
I spent 5 years in juvenile probation. I also managed the juvenile division for a year, but the last 10 years have been.
A lot's happened in 1 week. You've done a tremendous job getting some things rolling. I think for me, there's a few things I'd like to see take place before I can make a decision.
One thing you mentioned that you wanted to see before they make a decision is renegotiate contracts. That's not a 1 or a 2 week exercise.
Okay.
I think that's unrealistic.
That's fine. Well, I'm not going to cut important services to thousands of kids unless I have some for sure. I'm not going to do what this board did 3, 4, 5 years ago without signed contracts. That's where I stand.
All right, well, going last, much of what I had to say has already been said. I've come away from this discussion with basically two things that I see that I've been convinced are true and accurate. The first is that this facility offers an extremely high quality of service to the kids that use it, that it's having positive outcomes on our kids, and it's well managed and operated. The second thing I've taken away is that this facility is too expensive in its current form for the community to be able to afford. We can no longer shoulder it as it is without significant changes. Now, we've seen, I can tell you before we had looked at these potential agreements with other communities, I was much more leaning toward closing the facility. But now with these potential changes in mind, I've come to a place where we need to consider the juvenile hall in the context of the budget as a whole. If we make this decision now, it will affect decisions that we'll have to make in just a few minutes. And so we need to combine those together. If we choose to maintain the juvenile hall, that will result in cuts in other areas, everything from libraries, parks, to fire services, and deputies on the street are potentially going to have to shoulder whatever burden is placed on the budget from this decision here. So similar to Supervisor Kirk, I don't feel comfortable making a recommendation at this time about whether or not to close it. I think that decision will be made in the context of the budget as a whole. Supervisor Ray.
So let's go back to where we started. We're here to make a recommendation on a warm closure, not closing the facility at this time. Is that correct?
Actually, the agenda is to direct staff as to whether or not the board will continue to provide funding for the juvenile hall in whatever capacity that might be.
Okay, getting back to the question that I proposed to you earlier, if by closing this facility under what we have been presented to us today, do we save any money?
As I said earlier, I do not think that we would, in consideration of the group home placements and the number of Tuolumne County youth that we have in our detention facility at this time.
Okay, so logically speaking, if we're not going to be saving any money, why are we going to be closing it?
So who pays for the group home
We're not going to
placement?
gain from it.
The county of Tuolumne pays for the group home.
General fund or non-general fund?
The social services fund, but I do want to make it clear, this is a county mandate. Does not matter which fund the money comes out of. If Rebecca runs out of money, we will be obligated to pay it. We don't get the decision to say no, because what they will do is the state has the option, and Debbie can speak to this, where we have watched them offset reimbursements or allocations that we would receive. They will offset those allocations by monies that we owe back to the state if we don't follow our obligations.
So before the juvenile hall was built, we placed juveniles out of county. For 3 years, we've been placing them in our hall. Why is it impossible to go back?
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying at this time, with the known information that we have, I do think it would be more expensive to place them outside of the county than to continue running our hall as it is right now.
And we don't know, we expect that we're going to have to repay at least a significant portion of that grant that built that juvenile hall. If we close it. It's not like it's costing us, as I said in my comments, it's not as if we're going to save the $1.5 million that it costs to operate that thing. We're going to get charged that money one way or another. So.
Okay.
Well, hold on. It's not about, I understand it's not about the 1.5 million. We're talking about a potential 600,000, but I have numbers in here that don't add up. I have projections when the real cost right now to house a kid is $12,700, and I have projections which cut that in half. So we're making decisions off projections that based on regional partnerships, which we do not have right now. We're talking about, but nothing's. So if you're going to ask me for a vote, go ahead.
Okay. Hold on. Staff When are you expecting a final direction on the budget?
I need some specific direction today, because on June 2nd, we will bring to your board that first blush of what that looks like for final approval on June 16th. But I want to make it clear, when we get to June 16th, we have a package budget for you. That includes balanced statements that we've worked with everything to get that where it is. So June 2nd is normally we bring that first look at what your balanced budget would look like.
Can you bring a budget on June 2nd, a proposed, whatever you want to call it, that has two options? One has the juvenile hall remained open as it is, making whatever assumptions you think is appropriate, and one that does a warm closure.
We can do whatever your board would like. I do want to remind you about it's really about layoff notices. If we were to close the juvenile hall, you would have to issue layoff notices. Those layoff notices must be issued 14 days before the effective date.
And that's why we're going to have a
That's
special
why-
meeting next week as well.
Well, I hadn't planned on it. If your board were to make the decisions and provide clear direction today, you wouldn't need a special board meeting next week. If you want a special board meeting because you want additional considerations, we can do that as well. So it's completely up to you.
I'm fine with.
I'm open to that idea of having two budgets. If we have two budgets, one with the juvenile hall open and one with the juvenile hall closed, and they're equal, then that answers the question.
Okay,
But
let
you
me
just said it's not going to save any money.
let me give you a caution.
We won't know
Based
that until
on
we look at the
information that
entire
I
budget.
can't,
Let me give you a caution here for someone that's gone through this a couple of times, and John will probably, I hope, will back me up on this. Okay, if we,
I was just going to make a suggestion because I understand the difficulty. Supervisor Campbell, what if we pause this discussion, go into the budget discussion, then come back to this discussion? You can have both budget and this discussion. That might be helpful.
That's what I was angling
start.
for. So I'd be open to that if the rest of the board is open to that.
yeah.
So we can look at these things in the context of the budget as a whole.
Good idea.
So, clerk of the board, would you please read item 4?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So then, this is consideration of providing staff direction on the development of the fiscal year 2021 budget. And if you want to call in for comments, the number's 533-6581.
Okay, so today, Tracy Riggs, County Administrator's Office, and with me is Eric Earhart, who is our Assistant County Administrator. And just my only concern, as I was voicing to Sarah just a second ago, is we are not going to go into specific detail on your presentation today, and that there are specific reasons that we talked about during our closed session. But let's go through this, and I'll answer what I can without having that level of detail that we did talk about earlier, and we'll see if we can help to get some of that cleared up. So we always start out with our the board's mission statement, which is providing exceptional public service that focuses on a healthy and safe community. We exercise natural and cultural and financial resource stewardship, and we promote economic prosperity that enhances the quality of life. And I know some of you are probably getting sick of these, but I only do this that as a county is a political subdivision of the state of California, and as such, the California Constitution does tell us that local government's primary responsibility is to provide for adequate public safety for their counties. Okay, so let's start getting into some of the slides here. So the budget timeline, we had this last time, it's just been updated. So today we are looking for board direction. We'll go over some specific details, more related to where are we, where we left off, and where are we today. On June 2nd, we would come back with the first look at a recommended budget. We would look for any final direction from the board. That is also the day that normally, if there were going to be layoff notices, that your board would approve those layoff notices, and they would be hand-delivered to the staff who would be affected. And then on June 16th, we then come to the board. That's normally the second board meeting in June. The board always approves the recommended budget for the next fiscal year. And what happens between June 2nd and June 16th, which is why we need as much time as possible, is we lay in any further directions that the board provides to us. We balance everything, and then we begin generating all of those statements and all of the additional reports that must be included for our auditor controller, then submit to the state auditor's office and controller's office for the budget. So if in the event that we need to have a special board meeting, we would like to remind, we just spoke about this, but remind your board that layoff notices must be given to any affected staff 14 days before the effective date. For this year, that effective date is June 21st, so we must have your board approve those layoff notices no later than June 4th. So if we were to do a special board meeting, we would need it on the 3rd or the 4th. Any questions on the timeline before we move on? No? Okay. So during the last board meeting on 5/19, we had a list of items that we had asked your board to consider. So we talked about recreation. We talked about really, in most context, but that was about a new fee structure to recoup some of the costs with providing recreation services. We talked about the Tuolumne Rec and Park and Rec contract. They've been providing that service for a long time for us there in Tuolumne City. We had talked about amending that contract, and so that the sheriff, he had said he would work with us, and then we would also with facilities management, Eric Aiken, to take care of those halls and those grounds around that area that is owned by the county. We did have, we talked about the Visitors Bureau. We talked about reducing or amending their contract. We also talked about the T-bid, and your board did ask that we come back with additional information. I simply have not had time to do all the research on a T-bid in the middle of trying to run this health emergency and get this budget balanced. We can work on that, but normally local government doesn't do that. Normally your Visitors Bureau and the lodging industry would work on that. Then we had an update on the juvenile hall because of board meeting before that. My office had been directed to contact the state agencies about what would it take to, if the board wanted to close the hall, what would that take? And that was when we did receive the written approval to do a warm closure if your board were to direct that. We talked about libraries. We talked about a lot of different things. Everything from closing libraries to going down to maybe one branch or eliminating other branches. So we did have that conversation. And then we had a short conversation about revenue measures and different ways to generate revenue. And that was specific to the TOT and sales tax. At the end of that meeting, your board did direct us to go ahead and amend the contract with TPRD, and we have been working with James Wood, who again is amazing to work with. Not only do they do great quality work, but they are very easy to work with as well, and he's been very amicable in our conversations with him, and I know that we will work something out that is the best for those that we serve there, as well as saving some money as we move into next fiscal year. So let's go into flipped my page too soon. So our CARES pending legislation, this was in the last slide as well, but we did take out the HEROES Act. What we have on now is the CARES Act, which last I've read as of last night when I was searching around and putting this together, was that nothing has changed from what we see right here. We're still seeing a potential allocation to Tuolumne County for $5.5 million. However, in its current form, it is only to reimburse for expenses directly related to COVID-19, and those are normally would be above and beyond type of expenses, so something we did not already budget for. We continue to work with our associations, including CSAC, RCRC, and then our individual associations to advocate that we would get the original language amended for this legislation that would allow us to use it to backfill lost revenues. If that were to happen, it's approximately between $1.5 and $2 million a current fiscal year, and we'll know as we get closer to the end of the year, what that will look like. And then for this next fiscal year, which is what we're talking about here, could be as much as $2 million. So as you can see, it can make a big difference for not only for how we end the year with use of our contingencies and reserves, but also for our decision-making for next fiscal year as well. So for the budget update, when we left off during 5/19, we said that we had a projected shortfall of $4.6 million. So with that, so just kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. That is proposed revenues of almost $73 million and proposed expenses of $75.5 million. So we right now currently have a deficit, it's not a deficit, a proposed shortfall of $2.7 million as we continue to work this problem. And as we get the questions, what changed? So what changed was concession bargaining. So we do have some of our bargaining units who have made agreements with us we talked about 3-week furloughs and wage freeze. So we continue to work with that. We have a reorganization. We talked about in the past one, we had the auditor controller and the treasurer tax collector who had reorganized their office. In this particular update, we have a reorganization by your assessor recorder and your ag commissioner. We also have departmental reductions. So we have met with our department heads twice this week. My weeks are blurring together. And then I've had individual meetings with the department heads as well. And what we did was we asked them all to go back to the drawing board and reduce their budgets by an additional 5%. And I will tell you, we have a few more items that we still need to key into the budget, but most of them have been keyed in. And our department heads, as always, have stepped up to the plate, and they're really, they're doing an awesome job, and I'm very appreciative of their work. Then what we did was during the last board meeting, we asked your board about taking recreation and really pushing it out, since it looks like with the governor's executive order and the state health officer's guidance that we wouldn't be able to do recreation until probably next spring anyway. So we did push recreation out until next spring. Standard Park, now we have it opening in September, and then youth centers opening in September as well. And that's why we have a difference between $4.6 million and the projected shortfall now of $2.6 million. So then we want to talk about some options for balancing the budget. First, I wanted, I've had a lot of comments and questions about why does it sound like I keep kind of putting public safety up against, say, libraries or rec or some of our other services. And the reason for that is, as you saw on our first slide, that is our primary responsibility, and that has always been the board's #1 priority, has always been public safety. So as you look at that, you can see in general fund employees, we have 384 current allocated positions, or FTEs, and of those, 225 of those are in public safety. So that's 58% of the general fund employees who provide some level of public safety, and that's really specific to the cost centers that you see below of our district attorney, the sheriff, animal control, public defender, probation, and juvenile hall. And for the sheriff, he does have 5 cost centers, but we've just put the sheriff on there, and that does encompass all of the services that he oversees. So with that being said, as we talk about what does this mean and what does it look like, we have some options here, and we'll go through each one of these. And, I understand our community, I get on social media and I'm listening, my ear is out there. I know everyone wants us to be able to save everything, and I know our board wants to be able to provide everything, but unfortunately, especially in light of the current financial crisis that we're in, we can't do everything. And so we do have to make some decisions. And so these are just to kind of give you the idea of what this might look like. So if we were to take the current projected shortfall of $2.6 million, and then we do have additional concession bargaining that we're in the process with, and if that were to come to fruition, it's approximately $660,000 in savings. And then if we were to say for direct costs related to running Standard Park, that of $113,000, if we were to add that in, we would now have a shortfall of almost $1.9 million. And then just to give you some further perspective, to run the libraries as they are right now, that doesn't mean any decreased branches or anything like that. It's at almost $1.1 million, and that is still operating on a pretty much of a shoestring budget for them. If you were to eliminate recreation, which the net cost right now, and again, this starts in April, so a net cost of $440,000. Our youth centers to run from September through next June are $258,000. And I'm not saying we're recommending this. If you were to eliminate all of those, we would have a $155,000 shortfall. That does keep your public safety as a priority, but we do lose some essential services that our community depends on. The next one is we show again that $1.9 million shortfall, but we kind of talk about some different options here. If we were to reduce our libraries down to one branch, so that would mean keeping your single branch in Sonora, we would work with our friends of the library for keeping Groveland going, and we would have a staff member who would go up once to twice a week to go up to Groveland to ensure that they have what they need. That savings is about $363,000. And for a full year, it would be more, but because we've backed out some of the costs for a partial year is why you're seeing a little bit less there. If we were to eliminate youth centers altogether, meaning, we just can't afford to run these anymore. We've only been running 2 for the last year anyways. That savings would be $258,000, and for a full year, it's closer to $300,000. And then if we were to add revenue in for recreation, knowing that as we brought it forward, if there's a $440,000 net cost, idea is we're probably not going to charge our customers that, like we talked about, we're not going to charge a child $13 to go swim for a day in a pool, but could we maybe get 25% more than what we already get? And I think there's a high likelihood that we could get there without it being too harmful. If we did that, the remaining shortfall would be $1.1 million, or almost 1.2. Now, we have some options on the bottom. We talk about using reserves to pay for library services. We want to remind you that we are expecting to start next year with $2 million. If we wanted to do that with only one branch and the changes we have above, we would use 59% of our reserves, and of course, we don't recommend that we would do that. To maintain library services as they are, meaning all of the branches, would use 77% of our reserves. Or the board could, and we don't recommend that either, or the board could say we want to keep some semblance of those services, which mean we would need to go into public safety and make further reductions. And when I say further, I just want to make sure that the board and the community understand that to get to $2.6 million, every single one of those departments I listed on a previous slide have already contributed and are doing significant reductions in their staffing or other areas of their budget. So they were already making some reductions. Then we get to option C, and we could talk about a few other things. We know that with the CARES Act, there's a lot of talk about amending that language to allow us to use it for lost revenue. One option could be, without use of reserves, is we could keep our libraries and our rec services closed until we get to the adopted budget. What that would mean is those staff who are currently furloughed would remain furloughed. We would then back out all of those additional costs out of the budget system, and then we would balance with the rest. We do have a few more reductions we'll put in, so that 1.7 that we're saying we might in savings, if we backed all the rest, then we would have about $200,000, and we do have some other items that will be keyed in. So we're confident we could meet that. That would allow the board and staff time to watch what continues to take place when we're looking at additional revenues, looking at the legislation, but it would keep those services closed. They've already been closed since March, so April, May, June, July, and then August. And then your board would make a decision then, which hopefully we would have more information to make a more informed decision. In order to keep those services, would we need to go into reserve? So there's just some options as we're trying to figure out a way as we move through this current health emergency, looking at the way that our services could still be provided. But all of this is really focused on keeping public safety the number one priority. And I do realize that our libraries and our rec services are part of that in some capacity, but they're not that direct that we see when we look at law enforcement, fire, animal control, district attorney, probation, public defender. I don't want to forget anyone because I want to come up and holler at me later. All of those are those direct services that you typically think about when you think about public safety, but we do realize that everything we do in local government really is related to public safety in one way or other. So with that being said, and I did want to say something in relation to this budget and then what we just had on our previous item, since we will circle back to it. While it's important when we look at what does it cost to provide a service, what does it cost to do anything that we do, what I have found equally important, whether I was a department head, an accountant in a department, or what I'm doing now, is looking at cost avoidance. And I did that, behavioral health, we had to reduce significantly from the 2008 to 2010. For those who know, MHSA is based in arrears. And so we knew we were going to see some significant reductions. And so what we did was we started reducing costs and looking at ways. So we looked at closing rented buildings. You have your department heads who are in rented buildings who are looking at just that. We looked at contracts for placements and residential placements or in other types of hospital situations. All of your departments are looking at just that. And you'll hear from your non-general fund departments on Tuesday when they will give you an outline of what they're doing to meet their budget constraints. But I just want to make sure that we talk about that because cost avoidance is just as important at looking at how we provide service and what is the cost of providing a service. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, so we'll take some questions from the board to staff, but first I want to tell anybody listening at home who would like to participate in this discussion that you can call in and have 3 minutes on this particular item to voice your opinion. And County Clerk, could you please give the instructions for calling in?
Sure. The number to call in is 533-6581.
Okay. I'll start over here. Supervisor Kirk, do you have any questions for staff?
Just to clarify, so option C, it gives us the ability to, and I don't want to push things down the road, but a lot could change between now and August. So that would give us a chance to just breathe, wait, get some more information, more facts, and then obviously we'd have to do a blitz decision-making at the very end, but that's what option C is giving us.
Correct. Exactly. It gives us time to look and see what might happen with some of these legislation and how our year end ends as well.
Now, I'm bringing up the juvenile hall because do we have the same time frame that we could work with them to get more information, more things done, or does something have to be done by July 1st or June? Was it July 1st?
Well, we can't back the juvenile hall out, right, because we have children who are placed. So we'd have to continue those services would have to be in there.
Right, but the decision on a warm closure, is there a date pending on that?
Your board could decide on a warm closure at any time during the year.
Okay, and with, what about that contract with Parker? We'll have a conversation later regarding the contract.
Oh, Kathy. Yeah, we talked about that earlier, if you remember.
Yeah, we'll have that conversation.
Okay.
Thank you. It's been a long day, a long couple of days. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Gray.
Knowing that it possibly kicks the can down the road for a month or so, possibly 2 months, I think that option C makes sense at this time. And, we know we have a lot of other work to do behind the scenes to get to that point. But, I don't want to see the Groveland Library close. But there's a possibility they may have to, and we'll have to live with it if that does happen. But the fact that I believe that under this CARES Act, it's my personal belief in following what I've been following, there will be some changes. And if those changes are what I think they will possibly be, then we should be able to. You got me on 3 minutes, huh? Okay. I think we'll be all right. I mean, if what's going to happen, what I believe will happen, then we're going to be okay. But the biggest concern is, and this is a question I have, is that if we do get that $5.5 million, and is it something that we have to spend within the next 6 months? And is there a way that maybe Debbie can put it in a special secret account or something like that?
Well, it does say it's for December. It'd be nice if they would change that language to take us to the next fiscal year. We are able to use it. If they changed it for revenue, we'd be able to do it for revenue from this last fiscal year, or this current fiscal year, sorry, and through, if they don't change the date, through next fiscal year through December. So we would have the ability, to either put it back into our reserves if we use it, to fund our contingencies. And of course, we would be working with Deb very closely as to how that money, how do we account for it?
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Rotifer.
I love this. I think option C makes the most sense right now. With this whole COVID thing and the potential legislation, and I don't want to make a decision where we cut something that we really don't want to cut, and then find out that we didn't have to cut it at a later date. So, I'm leaning towards going with option C. So that's me.
So the question I have is, with your recommendation on option C, it says keep libraries, recreation, standard park, youth centers closed until adopted budget. Are we talking layoffs?
No, what I had said, I'd recommend we continue with the furlough. So
And we can do that?
we can do that, yes.
Well, we need to negotiate that.
Well,
but
yes, we would, and we did talk about that briefly, but we'll circle back to that. But yes.
Okay. All right. I'll check and see, is there any public comment? Okay, we have 2 people waiting to make comments, so I'll go ahead and open it up to public comment.
Okay. You're on with the board. Go ahead for the board.
Okay, thank you. I hope you can all hear me. This is Malcolm Carden. I'm the president of the Friends of the Library. I won't spend too much time raising the hopes of people about the library, but I just wanted to mention a couple of things that might be helpful in the budget side of things. I had an email from Eric Aiken, the Rec and Libraries person, yesterday, asking me for some ideas, and I just wanted to fill in I've already responded to Eric, but I wanted to fill in the board on this. The first is that our fundraising, particularly if we adopt option C here, is going to be pretty much suppressed for a good part of the year, particularly the Book Nook, of course, which is one of our main sources of revenue at the main branch. And don't have any other major source. I think fundraising in general in the county is going to be pretty tough for the next year, if not longer. But option C seems to me to be the most practical, particularly given that the libraries are in stage 3 of any reopening, and depending on what happens in the next few weeks, that might get pushed out to September or so. Anyway, the other 2 ideas, Eric asked me for a couple of ideas about the library itself. And the first idea I had was it might be worth looking into charging an annual fee on library cards. There are reputedly 28,000 library cards in circulation out there. And even if only half of them were to be active, i.e. 14,000, if we put a $10 fee, annual fee on it, it would raise $140,000, which is quite a nice chunk of money. And it wouldn't have to be a permanent fee either. It could be an emergency surcharge or something just for 1 year. So that's the first idea. The second idea is we have quite an established volunteer staff at the library, or volunteer group in the Friends area. They run the Book Nook, and some of them participate in the back room activities as well. And we might want to take a look at having them do some more of the grunt work around the library. just to relieve some of the expenses there. I understand this is a rather dodgy situation to get into with the staff and so forth, but that was the idea that I came up with. So that's pretty much my comments. I'm still thinking about other areas of where we might be able to help out. As I say, I just got Eric's email about 6 o'clock last night, so I haven't had any chance to talk about it to the board, for example, although they have a copy of my email that I sent back.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. Yeah. Tracy, the comment that Malcolm made about the Friends continuing to operate the Book Nook, can we look into that as a possibility? He stated that that is a significant hindrance to their ability to fundraise. I understand we can close the library itself, and if there's a way we can parcel off that room so that the Friends can continue to operate it and fundraise out of that room, is that a possibility that we've looked into or something that we could look into?
We can look into it. We have not, and I just want to caution, we can absolutely do that. We can do whatever the board would direct us to do. I do think that we could experience some level of high agitation or frustration. Most of that traffic that comes in is obviously coming in because they're using the library. But I think that there's no reason I can't think of besides having staff to go check on it, keep it open and all of that. But I can't see any reason why we wouldn't. And I'll work that out with Eric Aiken and we can get back to the board on that.
Okay. And then the idea that was mentioned about a fee on library cards, is that something that's been considered or could be considered?
That is possible. It could be an amendment to the fee ordinance to implement that.
Yeah, I don't know about $10, but any little bit would help.
Yeah, would we get individuals to do it, right? And is it going to be mandatory? So those are all the conversations we'd have to come back and have with the board.
Yeah. Okay. I think we have another person waiting to comment.
Hello, my name is Lorraine Vogt, and I want to talk about the library. I think the idea of keeping the Book Nook open is a great idea, and the building can be arranged so that can happen. I'm concerned about the... Hello?
We hear you.
Am I on? Yes. Okay.
Yes, we hear you.
So I think the Book Nook idea is a great idea to keep that open. The library can be organized so that just the Book Nook is open.
Okay. All right. I think we lost Lorraine.
No, I'm here. I just turned myself off. I also think part of having the library open is educated electorate. People go in and use the magazines and newspapers. 20% of the people in the county don't have internet. They use that internet in the library. You can't get a job really these days without the internet. 12% of our people, over 12% of our people live in poverty. And I also want to talk about the heat when the county is really hot this summer. The library is one of the places where people go to keep cool. And I don't know what else you're going to open when the heat is a problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. Can we will the library still be able to be operated as a cooling center, or I guess a warming center as well in the
Right,
wintertime?
so you're not going to have staff. They would be furloughed.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it couldn't, but.
Well, I mean, not as an actual cooling center when we have that declaration made on those days when it's extremely hot.
The board could decide to open it. What I'm saying is you would need to have staff in the building.
Okay.
And so we would have to have staff to go in there to be there. So that would be the only
Okay.
caveat to that.
So we could, but it would cost more money.
Right. You would just need to make sure there's people there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the board? Now, the last question I have is that.
Supervisor Campbell, we do have some more public comment.
Oh, okay. We've had a couple more people call in and want to voice their opinions. So let's go with the next person.
Hi, my name is Kelly Smith, and I just wanted to make a comment on, the closure of the juvenile hall. I have a daughter. She's 14 years old, and she's been incarcerated over the past year and a half for 3 stays she's had there. And 8 years ago, my daughter was sexually assaulted by a 17-year-old boy, and that changed her whole entire life. It actually ruined it. And he was sentenced to 72 days in a juvenile hall, and he was sent out of county. And he came back and committed numerous crimes, and we always see him in the newspaper. He was never rehabilitated. And my daughter, she has suffered the trauma from that, and she has made poor decisions. She's done a lot of different things that has put her in there, and I just want to say that juvenile hall has been nothing but a blessing to me and my family. It's actually helped kind of bring her back to where she should be, to the daughter, that I had 8 years ago that was lost. And the amount of support that my daughter gets from that place is tremendous. She not only gets it from her probation officer, Cecilia, she gets it from Annie. Annie was her counselor for a little while. She gets it from Heather. Mike, the guy who was in charge prior, he was phenomenal. He worked very hard with my family. I mean, him and I did butt heads on some things sometimes, but the whole goal was to, rehabilitate Kaylee, and that's what we did, and we're still working on it. I mean, it's a process every single day, and I just want to say, she has had a lot of issues where she has had breakdowns, and she will call in the middle of the night, no matter what time of day it is, and she will call, and a JCO will pick up the phone, and they will talk her out of her panic, out of anything. And I mean, they literally have saved my child's life on numerous occasions. So, to close the juvenile hall and take the one thing that she has away from her will be detrimental, because it's hard for her to develop relationships after that has happened to her. And the juvenile hall has given her that back, and the amount of support she has mentors there. She has everything. It's not just a juvenile hall. They help her with anger management. They help her with every aspect of her daily living skills. When she went in, she had straight F. The Goldridge School, they got her to straight A's. They also did get her IEP, and they've worked with her diligently to make sure that my daughter succeeds after the trauma that she went through. And I worked 2 jobs to support her and to try and figure out, how to help the situation. But I would be lost without them. I would be lost without every single person.
I'm very sorry, but I have to cut you off so that we have enough time for the next people that are waiting to talk. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. This is Terry Marshall from Rush Creek Lodge and Evergreen Lodge. I just want to say regarding the previous caller, what a brave woman to call and share such a personal story, and it's very hard to transition back to talking about the library after hearing something as personal as that. So I just want to say my heart goes out to her and her family, and I hope things continue to get better. But the real reason that I called originally was just to say how much it's a privilege to follow what you guys are doing today, and I have a great deal of respect for what a tough job you have to do. My heart goes out to you. And as I'm listening to what some of the possibilities are, I just wanted to reach out and let you know that we are listening and we are here. And we want to be a resource for creative solutions. And when you look at something like libraries, which nobody wants to see close, we can be here to be a resource for you. I've already sent an email to my team with a call to arms to say, these are going to be tough times. Do we think we have any staff who might want to volunteer to help with some programming at the library if that's allowed? So please just, keep us as in your back pocket as, if you do have to cut something as valuable as libraries or recreation, let's look to our staff and our resources at our lodges and throughout our community. We're happy to be a part of, putting a Band-Aid on the solution until the funding is restored. And that's it. Love to all of you, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and be careful what you offer because we may take you up on it.
Yeah, no, we're ready. We are absolutely ready, and it's not just words, and we'll do it.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
I think we have one more person. Okay.
Thank you for holding. Are you ready to speak to the board? Hello? Thank you for holding. Are you ready to speak to the board? Okay. Can you turn on your computer speakers, please? You're on with the board.
Hello, my name's Victoria. I am a resident of Twainhart, and I have 2 kids, and I'm calling to voice what the library means to my children and I. My son is 4, and I have weekly gone to the library since he was less than about 6 months old, and hearing, and we live in Twainhart, and we did hear about how the library on wheels did have to get canceled, and that was really sad for us to hear. And now, having heard that the library, the life of the library is in jeopardy, is alarming to us. And I just want to say that it's a very important part for not only the children, but the stay-at-home moms, or not even the stay-at-home moms, for the moms and the parents who go and form relationships and bonds to build a stronger community. And, we get to know one another and speak, and that's really a firm foundation in a child and parent's life. And so I just don't want to see that end or be altered in any way. I feel like it's a part of our history, and, so I just wanted to say that and be a voice. We cannot stop funding the extracurricular things. That's what's important, especially in a young child's life. It's not learning. It's exploring and living. So, and interacting. And so I'm not really sure what else I have to say. I'm kind of now flustered and never, spoken to an actual board, but I do want my voice to be heard, because I'm not just representing my family, I'm representing a lot of other families who go there on it's a weekly basis, like these things are routine and bring us joy and spark creativity in parents and children. So, which is, the main, community, which is what we need to be ensuring, like a healthy, happy, unified community. So I'm going to end there, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. So, CIO Riggs, could you expand on the mobile library a little bit, since that was mentioned?
Right, so the mobile library is just along with all the other libraries. The reason the services aren't being provided right now is because of the health emergency. But it would also, as part of the option C, if we were to continue down that road, and that's considered, have always considered our mobile, the bookmobile, sorry, I'm trying to think of the right word. It's always being considered like another branch, so it would be considered one of those branches that would also, with services, would be kind of halted until we get to that adopted budget time.
So it would be just included as though it was another branch,
right?
Like Twain Harte or Tuolumne, or okay.
Right, and just to clarify, as of right now, there have been no decisions made, nor am I asking a decision at this point. If we go with C, as to what the any permanent closure or termination of services at this point, this would just, and as Malcolm said when he called in, we're talking about either 3 or 4. We just don't know yet. I've seen various iterations of that. We wouldn't be able to open them right now, even if we wanted to.
Okay. Now, while we've been talking, we've had a couple more folks that are interested in speaking to the board, so we're going to allow them to go ahead.
No, you're fine, as long as the speakers are off to your computer. Just a moment, please.
Don't know how to do that, but I'll see if I can figure it out.
You're on with the board.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead and speak to the board.
Okay. Hi, this is Beezy Smith. I am here to talk about support for the library. My concerns about closing the library are, like many people have expressed, go back to the heart of the library's impact in our community. I think in terms of the viability of keeping any of the libraries open, I think the first priority should be to keep the main library open in Sonora, because that's the heart of services. That's where all of the reference staff is and collection development activities are done. That is the admin piece that, if that was taken away, it would completely undermine the infrastructure of the library itself and its administration and its staff. What I would recommend in terms of how to select branches, if you get to that point, is to take a look at the circulation of the different branches. There are statistics on how many books are checked out, how many people attend programs, and decisions should be based on which branches are the most active in terms of which ones to try to keep open. I've worked in libraries for many, many years, as some of you know, and that is always the factor that's taken into immediate consideration, is the circulation of particular libraries. We all know that libraries have immense intrinsic value to our community, to make sure that we have an informed citizenry, to make sure that people of all socioeconomic levels have access to learning and information. And as Lorraine Vogt earlier mentioned, many people in our community do not have access to the internet. They don't have the resources of personal home libraries, nor do they have the capability to expand their personal home libraries. So what can we do as a community to carry forward the standards of having a well-educated citizenry so that we can all be informed? The young mother who spoke about the viability and the importance of the library to her children is a really critical thing that has to do with building the strength of our community's future in terms of people's appreciation of, not just appreciation of literature, but the actually the appreciation of access of information, access to greater learning, and being given the gift of intellect, quite honestly, to be honest with you. So I just want to say that for me, one of the most important things in terms of our intrinsic values is to keep the library going. I'm very sorry
Maggie,
to hear about.
I'm really sorry, Maggie. I gotta.
Some of the other things, but I do personally consider the library as having the potential to provide.
I got to cut you off right there. I really apologize. We've got another person that would like to speak.
Abilities to also serve online. Big thank you to the people at Rush Creek and Evergreen.
Thank you very much. We got to cut you off right there. I think we've got at least one more person. Okay. Thank you. And I apologize for having to cut folks off. We've got it on the agenda listed for 3 minutes. And so I think it's important to hold to that to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to speak on these issues that, obviously have generated a great deal of interest and passion in the community. So with that, I think we'll hear from the next person.
Good afternoon, Board. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Michelle Harrington. I'm a resident of Sonora. I just wanted to express how vital libraries are to our community. And I understand that you guys are facing tough decisions and that cuts do have to be made somewhere. But the services that a library offers really cannot be replaced by any other means. All walks of life benefit from the community, whether low income, moms with young children, and even our seniors, as it was pointed out about the cooling centers earlier. So I would hope that the board would encourage additional revenue generation options, not just closure. I think it was the president of the Friends of the Library expressed an idea in terms of raising revenue. And certainly there's other options as well. So I would encourage the board to look at those options, not just closure, and keeping some sort of library services open for all of our residents.
Thank you very much for those comments. I think we've got one more person calling in, so go ahead. I think this is the fifth or sixth one more, but we see that happen in regular board meetings, so not a big surprise.
Just a moment. Okay, there you are. You're on with the board.
All right. Hi, my name is Adam Jill. I'm just calling because I'm very concerned about the future of our library program here in Tuolumne County. I just wanted to say I think it's definitely a priority as far as the learning of our community's children to keep this program running. I think it's just crucial for the community.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Adam. Do we have any more public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment portion and bring it back to the board. Are there any final comments from the board? I'll start with Supervisor Kirk.
I like option C. That's it.
Okay. Supervisor Gray?
Option C. Option C.
Okay. I did have one or two more questions. Does option C, so going back to the previous discussion that we've now kind of brought into this discussion, does option C include, what is the juvenile hall open or is it closed in option C?
And that's because we haven't been directed otherwise. It's still in this budget as you see before you.
Okay. And then initially when you were talking about some of the considerations that were made, you brought up the Visitors Bureau. Is any change to the Visitors Bureau included in option C, or say any of the options?
No, they're not.
Okay.
So,
all right, well,
with that being said, are we going to discuss Visitors Bureau another day?
We can discuss it now. We can bring it back on the 2nd. You guys were kind of all over the place about where you'd like to be with that. So that's why it's
because it kind of feels like everything's coming to a halt until we find out if this CARES thing goes through. So I kind of.
Well, part of it is trying to get to a balanced budget, right? You know, a lot rides on the CARES Act. If the CARES Act it allows for that backfill for lost revenue, it makes a huge difference, as not just for us, but for any county and city, actually nationwide. So it makes a huge difference for all of us and kind of changes. We would still have an issue this year, but nowhere near as much as what we're having because of the health emergency.
Okay, would Lisa with the Visitors Bureau need us to have a discussion, or should we wait until a later date? I don't want to catch anybody off guard, but it kind of feels like that's where we're going.
Right. So during the last board meeting, I had recommended that we amend the Visitors Bureau contract. We had a lot of conversation, meaning you had a lot of conversation about that. What we were directed to come back with was more information about T-bid, which I just have not had time to do. So we could do one of two things. We can have further conversations. We could also bring the conversation back after we get to the balanced budget, because it doesn't mean that you couldn't amend that contract at any time. We just need to give specific number of days for notification. So we could bring it back after we get a balanced budget and then start having some more in-depth conversation where there's not the rush to have it. It's up to your board.
So in other words, if we get to the point where we are looking at a balanced budget, but we can't quite make it at that point, we can look at other options like the Visitors Bureau.
Well, and I would recommend if we're talking about something like that it would not just be because you're balancing the budget, but really is about the use of the funds from the TOT coming in. So, you know, it's been a point of conversation for several years now. I know Craig had it a few years ago. The contract was renewed and amended and renewed to include not just the 10, but the 2%, because at the previous contract that was not in there. I'm sorry, we went from 8 to 10, not 10, because we're not at 12, so 8 to 10%. Yeah, so we could definitely, I mean, this would allow us to get to that balanced budget that we are obligated to have by state law, and then we can spend a little more time having some conversation, and staff would have a little bit more time to look at some of those things and make some of those phone calls and have those conversations that we have not been able to have in the middle of, you know, health emergency and trying to get the budget put together.
Okay. Any comments? Okay. So, of what we've been presented, option C is the only real option. And I wouldn't even consider this, to be honest with you, if we hadn't already had to close libraries and rec to begin with because of COVID-19. In fact, we probably wouldn't even be here in such a bad situation if it weren't for those things at all. So it's the only option. And going back to the juvenile center, I'm hearing strong indications from your office and from probation that there is that it is net neutral, the cost of opening and closing the juvenile center. Is that correct?
Neutral, or even if you look across all funds, even we would be experiencing, I would say, potentially a savings with the number of youth that we have that are in the detention facility at this time. You know, that varies. When we opened the detention facility, we didn't have that average of 11 youth, and right now we have that. So with that, with the number of youth, and then looking at if we didn't have it, the group homes and the cost of group homes, I would say it's either neutral or even a bit of a cost savings as where we're going, especially in light of Chief Probation Officer working to get those rates increased, and that'll make a big difference for us. And remembering that in 21-22, we'll also start seeing some revenue from those camp beds also coming in. So, and I know that he will continue working on this in the future.
It just concerns me because there's a lot in the air, and you know, I can say if that is the case, then it doesn't make sense to close the juvenile center, obviously. But if we're back here a year from now talking about another budget with where this hasn't occurred, we haven't gotten the agreements that we thought we'd get, we haven't seen the kind of savings that we're expecting and that we're projecting in this budget, there's going to be a real problem. And we'll be right back here looking at closing the juvenile center again. And there'll be a much stronger case for doing so if the projections that we've looked at today don't bear out.
Yeah, so So the chief and I have talked about this, and he will be coming back with quarterly updates for the board, so you can see where's he at with negotiation of those final contracts, which we should be able to have before we get to the adopted. But you'll have a better idea, what is that average daily census, what is the average length of stay, and all of those and what is the, it's also the makeup, right? The more of our youth and the less of the other, I mean, it just varies. If you have more people paying, it helps to offset that daily rate.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
people be coming in to give your board updates on a quarterly basis.
Okay, well, I support option C as it's written.
All right.
So again, are we back to saying option C, support, and keeping the hall open, or are we gonna have a separate discussion on the hall again? Because I made it very clear.
Well,
there's 3 or 4 things that I'd like to see before I make a decision on the hall. But that's.
So it looks like you have 3 in favor of continuing with option C with the hall in. Did I miss something?
All right, let's have a vote.
Option C includes the hall at this point.
Okay.
So we're
I'm not-
looking for consensus is what
Right,
you're
so
asking us?
I'm looking for direction for developing the budget for fiscal year 2021. We'll be back on the 2nd. You'll get to see what it looks like when we put all this together. And then on the 16th for final adoption of the recommended budget.
And I'd say by the next meeting, well, so will we have a next meeting on?
Well, June 2nd, we would still have the next meeting.
You've got one work day between now and then.
I'm aware, yes,
Right.
we'll be working through the weekend.
I know that, but I just want the board members to know that.
Yeah, so there won't be any contracts that would be negotiated. I don't even think we would have a fight, there wouldn't be, because you still have to have counsel once they negotiate those. They need time to review those. That could take some time with everything else they have on their plate.
Yeah.
My point being, there would not be time between now and June 16th to have fully executed contracts before you for signature by June 16th. By the
Okay.
adopted budget, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to have those.
So then that's what I'm getting at. By the adoptive, if this vote is for keeping it open indefinitely, no, I'm not on board for that. If it's giving us more time to get some more of this information by the adopted budget, I will support that moving forward today. So,
You will revisit the entire budget when we get to the adopted budget. We always do.
and the hall will be a part of that conversation.
Every single cost center will
And
be a
these
part of it.
concerns, okay.
Yep,
All right.
Okay, do you have your direction?
I do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are we going
All right.
back into closed session?
So we're going to adjourn into closed session. We'll be revisiting items 1 and 2. Just item 1 for discussion. Do I need to open up for public comment again? Okay. Do we have anybody on the phones for
You want me
public
to read
comment
it?
on item 1? And Alicia, could you please read the agenda item and instructions for public comment?
So it's a closed session conference with the labor negotiator, Tracy Riggs, Eric Earhart, Ann Frumd, Kim Phipps, Authority Government Code Section 5497.6, all bargaining units. And for public comment, the call-in number is 533-6581.
Okay, do we have any public comment?
There's a little delay too, so just so you know.
Okay, so we'll give it till 3:15. Okay, so I see no public comment, so